susu.
It's been 12 years since the apocalypse started, and I've spent 10 of those years looking for my little girl, Xiao AI. She was taken when she was only 2 years old. That day, it was pouring rain and the zombies were attacking again. Inside a bedroom at White Tiger Base, I found a man, weak, bleeding, and cowering in the corner. He was one of the last links in the chain of people who had stolen Xiao AI. I handed over payment to Maisie, a woman I often worked with, who had helped me capture him. She warned me to be prepared for the worst outcome, but I didn't care. My heart was ice cold. I interrogated the man, holding an old photo of Xiao AI. At first, he pretended not to remember, but after I beat him, he finally admitted it. 10 years ago, he bought Xiao AI but threw her to the zombies to save himself. She was crying for her mother, and he let her die. Hearing that, something inside me broke. I had fought so hard to survive all these years, hoping to find her alive. But now I knew she was gone. My Xiao AI, crying for me in her last moments. Tears fell as I whispered to her picture. "Mommy found you." I killed the man, my last target, and felt empty. I had nothing left to live for. Maisie had told me to clean up after myself, but instead, I left a final message. I knew Maisie would find me and take care of my body. In the end, the world called me Su the Death Defier, but this time, I gave up. I lay there with Xiao AI's photo, my tears mixing with blood on the cold floor. 12 years into the apocalypse, I finally stopped fighting. I woke up to the sound of yelling, angry, familiar, yet so distant. My head hurt and my body ached, making me wonder just how badly I'd been injured. The room I was in felt strange. Golden curtains swayed in the breeze, and the faint smell of blood, alcohol, and fresh trees filled my nose. Then I heard fists pounding and felt like I had seen the scene before.
Susu, ore avec?
It was him. Standing there, Xiaqingyan. My heart instantly filled with disgust. He looked just like he did before the apocalypse. Clean white shirt, blue jeans, handsome and calm. This was the Xiaqingyan who used to love me before everything went wrong. Before the world fell apart. Before I had my little girl Xiao AI. But this wasn't right. In my memory, I had already killed him years ago after discovering his betrayal, when I learned he handed Xiao AI over, leading to her disappearance. My body reacted instinctively. I kicked him hard, rolled out of bed, and grabbed a gun from the nightstand, pointing it straight at his forehead. He needed to die again. Before I could act, another man appeared, tall, muscular, with sharp eyes. In one swift motion, he snatched the gun away, tucked it into his belt, and told me gently, "Killing is illegal." I froze. My strength felt like it had disappeared. My kicks were weak, my reflexes slow, like I'd been thrown back to a time before the apocalypse. Then I looked at that man's face. He reminded me of Xiao AI, so much so that my heart ached. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered her name, too much like
Xiao Ai.
Desperate to understand, I dug through the mess of clothes and found a military watch. The date, November 15th, 2017. It was 45 days before the apocalypse. My mind went blank.
Time
Had turned back 12 years? Tears streamed uncontrollably down my face as I grabbed my clothes and ran into the bathroom. I leaned over the sink and sobbed like I hadn't cried in years. If this was a dream, I begged not to wake up. From this moment forward, Xiao AI would return to me. She would grow in my belly, be born, and one day become a little girl running all around, laughing in joy. I clutched onto that fragile hope, crying harder. If this was a second chance, I would do everything to protect her. Everything. I woke up crying in the bathroom, my heart breaking from everything that happened. Outside, Xiaqingyan was yelling at the man, Yiyu, threatening to make him pay for last night. Yiyu, calm and honest, admitted his fault but said they wouldn't win a case because he hadn't forced me. His words brought back fragments of what happened. I had been drugged and Yiyu, drunk as well, tried to save me. But things spiraled out of control. I stopped crying when I thought of Xiao AI, my baby. In my previous life, my sadness during pregnancy had made her insecure. always crying and clinging to me after she was born. But this time, I realized Xiao AI was still just a thought, not yet real. I had 45 days until the apocalypse began, and Xiao AI would soon grow inside me. I couldn't let my emotions harm her again. Looking in the mirror, I saw my younger self, innocent, weak, dressed in a white dress and denim jacket. I wasn't the same woman who survived 12 years of the apocalypse. Back then, I had been like a helpless flower, relying on Xie Yan, running from zombies, and struggling to survive. Even after I awakened my water abilities and became stronger, Xie Yan still manipulated me, pretending to love me while resenting me. He pressured me to abort Xiao AI, but I refused. Feeling her move inside me gave me strength and purpose. Now, looking at myself, I swore things would be different. I would protect Xiao AI, care for her myself, and never let anyone, especially Xie Yan, near her. I had the knowledge and strength of someone who survived the apocalypse for over a decade. This time, I had the advantage. When I walked out of the bathroom, I faced Xie Yan and Yiyu. Xie Yan was furious, shouting again, saying Yiyu deserved to go to jail. I told him one word, get out. He was nothing to me now. I looked at Yiyu, who awkwardly tried to apologize and hide his gun. I noticed again how much he looked like a grown-up version of Xiao AI, and tears almost came back. But I didn't have time for this. I had 45 days before the world ended. Xie Yan could live for now. Killing him would only waste precious time. I would focus on preparing for the apocalypse and ensuring Xiao AI's safety. This time, I would not fail. Don't worry, Xiao AI, I whispered to myself. Mommy will protect you. I won't let you go. When I told Xie Yan to get lost, he didn't believe I meant him. He tried to pull me along, saying he'd get justice for me. Instead, I stepped forward and kicked him, hard. I told him if I ever saw him again, it would be his death day. Meanwhile, Yu stood awkwardly to the side, looking at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe he thought I was mistaking Xie Yan for my real enemy, him. But no, I knew exactly what I was doing. Xie Yan, on the floor in pain, shouted about how he didn't know that White Lotus by Luoluo drugged me. By Luoluo. I finally remembered her. That scheming girl had put a drug in my drink to humiliate me. If I hadn't run upstairs that night, it would have been Xie Yan in Yiyu's place. And of course, everything would still be my fault. How ridiculous. I sneered at Xie Yan. He and Bai Luoluo had betrayed me before, and they would pay. 45 days from now, when the apocalypse begins, I'll make sure they and everyone else who sold my daughter, Xiao AI, will suffer terribly. They don't deserve to live in this world. I stepped on Xie Yan's hand, ignoring his screams, and walked out. I had no time to waste on trash like him. I had 45 days to prepare, to stockpile supplies, and get ready for the end. I wasn't the naive girl I used to be. Outside, the cold wind blew, and I shivered. But then I laughed at myself. I'm supposed to be a future ice ability user. What's a little cold? I looked around the bustling commercial center. This place was filled with stores, supermarkets, and resources I'd need to survive when the world collapsed. As I walked, my mind was clear. I looked forward to the apocalypse now. When the world ends, Xiao AI will be born. I'll become stronger, and no one will ever hurt her again. Suddenly, I realized someone was following me. I turned around and saw Yiyu. He looked hesitant, almost guilty, and raised his hands in surrender, saying, "Don't be nervous, I won't hurt you." I wasn't nervous at all. I asked him, "Why are you following me?" Yiyu fumbled for words. He said he just wanted to ask how he could make things better for me after last night. He thought my pain was because of him. I nearly laughed. How little he knows. I told him coldly, "Stay away from me. If you leave me alone, I'll feel better." He didn't know the truth. Yu's just a stranger to me now, someone who happened to look so much like Xiao AI that my heart ached when I saw him. I didn't need his guilt, his apologies, or his presence. I walked away, focused on my goal. I would survive the apocalypse and protect Xiao AI. This time, no one would stop me. When I realized I was pregnant with Xiao AI, everything changed. The anger I once felt toward Yu slowly disappeared. He gave me Xiao AI, my little angel, and holding on to hate seemed pointless. In truth, what happened between us wasn't about him forcing me. It was mutual. I'd seen too much in the apocalypse to dwell on it. Then it hit me. My parents were still alive. How could I forget? In my last life, I never looked for them. When the world fell apart, I was so focused on surviving and finding Xiao AI that I abandoned my duty as their daughter. They had loved me so much that they gave up their chance to escape north, choosing instead to head south in search of me. And they died because of it. I couldn't let that happen again. I turned and ran, leaving you behind. I found a small shop with a public phone, my hands trembling as I dialed a number I knew by heart. When my mother picked up and I heard her voice, I nearly broke down. I held my mouth to stop the sobs, but when she asked me why I was calling, I cried anyway. Mom, I need you and Dad to come to Xiang City right now. Bring money. A lot of money. Confused, she began scolding me about losing my phone. She didn't understand why I was crying so hard. I didn't explain. How could I tell her the apocalypse was coming? They'd think I was crazy. Instead, I begged her and my dad to come, insisting they leave immediately. I hung up before she could ask more questions. I knew they'd come. Worry and love would drive them to me. I wasn't going to let them die again. Xiang City was the best place to prepare. It was full of supplies, medical facilities, and even weapons factories nearby. In the apocalypse, this city would last at least 2 years. That was enough time to give birth to Xiao AI and make plans for survival. I'd build a safe haven for my family. When I turned around, I bumped into Yu, who was still standing there, watching me with worry. He looked just like Xiao AI, those stubborn features that made her so mischievous as a kid. For a moment, I smiled through my tears, remembering her chubby little face. Yi stared at me like I'd grown 2 heads and nervously asked, Are you calling your parents to give me my final judgment or something? I didn't answer. I had more important things to do now: save my parents, protect Xiao AI, and prepare for the end. This time, I wouldn't fail the people I loved. The whole family of the decent woman will come out to make a scene, and her mother will surely cry, make a scene, and even commit suicide. If a few lives are not lost in the end, it would be a shame to the audience's tears. Although Yu is deep in the military camp, he would occasionally watch this kind of soap opera. Su looked at Yu with squinted eyes and asked sarcastically, Are you afraid?
Well,
Yu seemed a little embarrassed and lowered his head uncomfortably. I'm not afraid of you making a scene. You won't get any results from making a scene.
I didn't use force last night.
The facts can be investigated. I just thought that instead of making a scene like this, it would be better to think of a more practical way to compensate you. What method? Give me money? Su's voice was a little sharp, with a hint of murderous intent in her eyes. What do you think of me? No, absolutely not. Yi was tongue-tied and waved his hands hurriedly. Su's small satchel was hanging on his strong and sturdy arms, swaying back and forth. I know you are not that kind of person. I saw you being drugged by your classmates last night. You saw that I was drugged, and you still. Su lowered her voice, and you still ran upstairs, didn't refuse, and even cooperated with me? Yi wanted to say something. His lips moved, but he only uttered one word, and then said nothing. He lowered his head dejectedly, stared at Su's chest, then quickly looked away, raised his hand and slapped himself hard, then suddenly straightened his neck, blushed, and said loudly, Girl, your name is Su, right? My name is Yu. How about we exchange phone numbers? I'm willing to take responsibility. Are you out of your mind? No, what I mean is, look, your boyfriend has broken up with you anyway, and you don't want the money, otherwise I'm a rough man, I can't talk, what do you think? Who said I don't want money? I want money. Give me all your money. Interrupting Yu's hesitant words, Su stretched out a fair hand. On her slender wrist was Yu's watch, which was only equipped by special forces. This watch was good and she would need it in the future, so she naturally came over. Su curled her fingers and looked at Yu indifferently. Give me the money and the gun. I can't give you the gun. Yiyu turned sideways and hid the gun on his waist.
Susuli que és prețos.
You can't just play with the gun. So he could give money, but not a gun. He couldn't hurt Su, and he couldn't put Su in jail. Unconsciously, Yiyu felt a sense of responsibility for Su. He fumbled around for a while, took out a bank card, put it in Su's fair little palm, and said honestly, I never expected something like this to happen. I've spent almost all my military pay. There's still 40,000 or 50,000 yuan in this card. The password is XXXXXXX.
You can use it first.
If it's not enough, I'll give you more every month. I can also apply for early retirement settlement money, which is probably about 100,000 or 200,000 yuan. Let me go back and write a report, apply for this money first, and then give it all to you. How long will it take? Can you make it in time for the end of the world? Su frowned, looking at the card in her hand, calculating how much living expenses she had in her card. She would first rent a house and stock up on tens of thousands of yuan worth of rice. I'll do it as soon as possible. Yiyu began to feel uncomfortable again. Su's attitude seemed to be a broken jar, as if she didn't want anything except money. From now on, Su would go against the pure line? After all, he had harmed an innocent girl. Frustrated, Yiyu thought about it, cleared his throat, looked at Su and asked, Su, don't be sad, or... Looked up at Yiyu for a long time before Su reacted. She took a deep breath, and for Xiao Ai's sake, she did not include Yiyu in her must-kill list. However, her expression became even colder, and she pinched Yiyu's fingers in the air, pinching hard, and said, My phone number is XXXXXXXXXX. Remember, when the money is ready, call this number as soon as possible. Be honest, before the end of December, maybe I can still show you a way. After threatening Yiyu viciously, Su took the shoulder bag that had been hanging on Yiyu's arm, walked a few steps sideways to the side of the street, raised her hand to stop a passing taxi, jumped in, gave an address, and the taxi drove away with her at a high speed. Yiyu was left standing in the sun, wearing a camouflage uniform, his back straight, his face looking as if he wanted to laugh but didn't dare to. It was hard for him to imagine that such a slender girl who he could crush to death with one hand could actually say such cruel words. Point out a clear path for him? He has done such a sin, he really needs a clear path to find peace of mind. Su in the car went all the way back to Xiangtan University. After getting off the car, she found her dormitory according to her vague memory. If her memory serves her correctly, Su should have a computer now. Before the end of the world, the internet was well developed. It was an information age. There was everything on the internet. Any type of house you wanted to rent was available. Her dormitory was located in building number 1 of the women's dormitory. Before entering the dormitory, Su habitually walked around building No. 1. This was called surveying the terrain in advance, and then entering the building. While climbing the stairs, Su shook her head. In such a densely populated area, how could the survivors escape when doomsday came? All the buildings of the women's dormitory are surrounded by a high wall. The purpose is to prevent the male students who are in heat from climbing over the wall to get in, and also to prevent the female students who are in heat from climbing over the wall to run away. Therefore, the entire women's dormitory area has only 2 doors. The front door is of average size, and it allows female students to enter and exit normally on weekdays. But once the crowd surges, it will definitely be blocked. The back is considered a fire door for emergency escape. If there is a small fire or a classmate is heartbroken and wants to jump off the building, this door will come in handy. But it is only as big as a fire truck, and unless there is an emergency, this door will be kept locked all year round. To go out and pry the lock on the fire door after renting the house. Although her heart had become so cold and hard that she would kill without blinking an eye after 12 years in the apocalypse, she had not completely lost her humanity. Perhaps it was because of Xiao Ai's existence, or perhaps it was because in the process of looking for Xiao Ai, she met many people who helped her, so from beginning to end, Su's conscience was still there. The end of the world is coming. This is the inevitable trend of historical development. Su can't do anything about it. Nor does he have the ability to save everyone one by one. He can only provide an escape route for the survivors. Doing this won't cost him a thing. Her dormitory is on the 5th floor, room 502. There are 4 bunk beds in each room for people to sleep on and a table under the bed for students to place their computers and books. The 4 rooms share a balcony and a multi-person toilet. This environment is quite good. Before the end of the world, everyone is lively and everyone is like a real sister. They grow up and cry together in such an environment and enjoy their youth after adulthood. But when the end of the world comes, it's hard to say. Everyone is selfish anyway, and Su is no exception. This is human nature. There is no need to complain or blame others. Everyone should accept their fate and strive to survive. The most frightening thing is the scene where sisters betray each other and push others behind their backs. Su has experienced it, so she has a clear view of human nature. There are good people, but they don't live long. There are also many bad people, but it is often these so-called bad guys who save Su's life at the most critical moment. The door of her dormitory was open, but there was no one there. Su walked in and looked around. It was clean, and there was a faint fragrance. She walked to her desk, touched the table and chairs that she hadn't seen for a long time, then turned on her computer, clicked on the local website, and browsed the rental information on the internet. The safest place in Xiangqing is not actually the urban area. Although there is no shortage of supplies in the urban area, the population is also relatively dense. Therefore, after the end of the world, the urban area and schools are both severely affected areas. Relatively speaking, there are fewer people in the suburbs. Although supplies are scarce, when the end of the world comes, if you want to find supplies, you have to go to the urban area. But if you think about this and store some supplies in advance, it will be a paradise at the beginning of the end of the world. However, the suburbs are not a safe place once and for all because it is close to the outskirts of Xiangqing. The survivors all run out of the city center and then wait for the army to come, and then organize themselves to clear the zombies into the city little by little, look for supplies, and finally wait until the zombies are completely cleared out and the survivor base is established. At that time, the suburbs will be closer to the barbed wire, and if encountering a large-scale zombie tide, the suburbs will be the first to be hit. Su didn't plan to stay in the suburbs of Xiangqing for her whole life. She planned to occupy a place in the suburbs first, so as not to sleep on the floor with the survivors. She would move to another place after giving birth to Xiao AI safely. By that time, it would be several years after the end of the world. It would not be enough time for Su to resettle her parents and Xiao AI. Regarding the house, Su chose to rent in the Apple Villa district. It was a newly developed villa, which was said to be provided for the rich to live in. The green area was very large, and the villas were far apart. There was also a basement under each villa, which could be used to store supplies. The most important thing was that those villas were fully furnished. Some owners would choose to rent them out if they didn't live in them, but more owners didn't live in them themselves and had a lot of money, so they left the villas empty. Thanks to the information age, Su quickly paid the deposit online. Today, after paying the balance, she will be able to get the key from the agent. She did not rent the house for long, only 2 months, renting 2 months and paying 1 year as a deposit. She also wasted a lot of time and effort and lied to the agent, saying that her parents were coming over to travel and would only stay for 2 months. The agent also wanted to do her business, so he agreed without any suspicion. The deposit was paid with the money in Yu's card. The rent was 5,000 yuan a month, plus the final payment and the deposit. A total of 15,000 yuan was spent. There was only 45,000 yuan in Yu's card in total, leaving only 30,000 yuan. Su decided to use all this money to buy rice. She thought about it and realized that she was an ice ability user who had mutated into a water ability user. Before the mutation, she would first awaken the water ability. Her family needed water to drink, wash clothes, cook, and so on, so water would not be a problem. The reason why plants mutated after the end of the world was because they absorbed the polluted water. She could use the clean water she released to grow some edible vegetables. There are large green spaces in front and behind the rented villa, about 100 square meters. Su Su only needs to build a shed to prevent the infiltration of unclean rainwater and then set up a simple water supply system. However, no matter how isolated the plants are, the plants will still mutate to some extent. As long as the degree of mutation is not as exaggerated as that in the outside world, it is fine as long as humans can eat it.
Don't buy meat now.
Just buy as much as you eat. You can save a little amount for a month or so. First, meat is difficult to store and will easily spoil if left for a long time. Second, the end of the world is coming, and Su Su wants to eat the meat of mutant beasts. The energy contained in ordinary meat is still not as much as that of mutant beasts. The energy problem is also easy to solve. The natural gas will not be cut off all of a sudden at the beginning of the end of the world. She will first buy a few miniature household hydroelectric generators. When Su's father comes, and he has adapted to the sudden change of the end of the world, Su Su will ask Su's father to build a small power generation system. Su's father likes to tinker with these things on weekdays. It's just a power generation system, which is not a difficult task for him. In this way, boiling water, cooking, lighting, and so on will not use much electricity on a daily basis, and a power generation system can supply it completely. Su Su will find a way to find some money to buy some bottled liquefied gas and store it in the basement. When the end of the world comes, there will be no worries about energy for the first period of time. Su Su didn't have much living expenses in her own card, and her parents only gave her 1,000 yuan a month, but she and Xie Qingyan had been in love since high school. Xie Qingyan's family was better off than Su Su's, and on weekdays, Su Su ate Xie Qingyan's food and used Xie Qingyan's things. It was absolutely true to say that she was a daughter that depended on Xie Qingyan. So Su Su saved some money, about 10,000 yuan, and used it to buy some seeds at the vegetable market and some plastic film for greenhouses. He then built a simple small planting shed. This amount of money was completely enough. Thinking of Su Su, she decided to do it. She got up, turned off the computer, and began to pack her clothes, mobile phone, and bank card. However, she only heard footsteps outside the dormitory door, and then the dormitory door was opened with a click. Su Su, you still have the nerve to come back? Before she even entered the room, Bailola's sharp and sarcastic voice rang out. What's wrong with you? You beat a yen so hard that he was hospitalized. You are so shameless that you ran out and slept with another man for a night, and then you blamed a yen for it. Her voice was really loud and very deliberate. At this time, the people in the dormitory had finished their classes and were returning to the dormitory to put their books away. Bai Luoluo shouted so loudly, obviously wanting to let everyone know what that which Su Su was doing last night. Su Su, who was standing beside the chair and bending over to pack her backpack, raised her head slightly and looked at Bai Luoluo expressionlessly. The Bai Luoluo now was really completely different from the Bai Luoluo a few years later. Although the Bai Luoluo now also put on makeup and dressed fashionably and beautifully, she was still just a student who had not experienced much of the world. Her eyes and eyebrows were full of innocence. Unlike Bai Luoluo in the future, although she also awakened the water power, because this woman was born lazy and gluttonous, she was too tired to go out to fight monsters, and she couldn't stand other people's faces when sitting at home, so she slowly began to take shortcuts to survive. A woman with a little bit of beauty, what shortcuts can she rely on to survive? What else can she do besides selling meat? But this is not the scary thing about Bai Luoluo. The scary thing is that in the end Bai Luoluo also engaged in the business of buying and selling people, and the first girl who made Bai Luoluo taste the sweetness was Su Su Xiao Ai. At that time, everyone was already on the way to the north, and settled in a small human survival base called Chuncheng. Su Su's superpowers mutated because of excessive water release, and she became an ice superpower, instantly becoming the main combat force of the entire team. She was often asked to go on missions, and she couldn't take Xiao Ai with her when she went on missions. At that time, Su Su still trusted Xie Qingyan. Although Xie Qingyan's dislike for her was already obvious, what did Xie Qingyan say at that time? He said that if they couldn't be lovers, they could still be the person Su Su trusted the most. Sadly, Su Su actually believed it. Should she say that she miscalculated the horror of human nature, or that Xie Qingyan's acting skills were too good? In any case, before Xiao AI got into trouble, the image he gave to Su Su was always the affectionate Xie Qingyan before the end of the world, although Xie Qingyan had already drifted away from her at that time. Just because of that one sentence, every time when she went on a mission, Su Su would hand Xiao AI to Xie Qingyan for care. In fact, looking back now, there were signs of things. Although Xiao AI looked small, a 2-year-old child understood everything, but her language was not mature enough. Every time Su Su handed Xiao AI to Xie Qingyan, Xiao AI would cry out of breath. Her small and tender hands would always tightly grasp her clothes. Her big round eyes would stare at her pitifully, and she would keep shouting, "Mom, love AI be good, love AI be good. I want mommy, I want mommy." Su Su wanted to dig her heart out when she saw the miserable and pitiful appearance, but she would fiercely pull the clothes out of Xiao AI's little hands every time. It was not that she was cruel, but the world outside was 100 times more difficult than the base. Every time Su Su went out, she risked her life. If Xiao AI followed her, the risk factor would increase greatly. Of course, these were all Su Su's self-righteousness in the past. Later, she realized that under the cleansing of the end of the world, the darkest and ugliest part of everyone's heart can be infinitely magnified, and one can never use the impression before the end of the world to judge the human nature after the end of the world. Everyone will change, and you can only keep your own children by your side. Returning her mind to reality, Su Su didn't want to recall how good Xie Qingyan was to her before the end of the world, and how Xie Qingyan gradually began to dislike her after the end of the world. That would make her feel like vomiting. She just looked at Bai Luoluo, with a hint of scarlet flashing across her black and white eyes. "What are you looking at? Am I right? You ran out and slept with a wild man for a night, and even teamed up with that wild man to beat up a yen." Seeing more and more people gathered at the door, pointing fingers at Su Su and whispering about her, Bai Luoluo felt very proud and continued to destroy Su Su's reputation. "Tell me, a yen treats her very well." The girls outside the door pointed fingers at Su Su, as if Su Su had really done something unforgivable by heaven and earth. Without knowing the truth, they began to morally judge Su Su. There was a white, slightly plump girl who spoke the loudest. She nodded in agreement without missing a beat. "That's right. We all see how good Xie Qingyan is. Su Su, what you did is really too much. Luo, and I just went to the hospital to see Xie Qingyan. The methods you and your adulterer used are really outrageous. For things like this, you should call the police and make you spend the rest of your life in jail." "That's right. If it were me, I would be too embarrassed to come back." A group of girls with nothing to do actually didn't all think that Su Su was completely heartless. Most of them just thought it was fun and joined in with a word or two to seem noble. Only a few girls were very angry because Su Su had hurt the men of their dreams. A man like Xie Qingyan, who has a gentle and fair appearance, a well-proportioned and tall figure, a relatively wealthy family, and is generous and not stingy, can really pull in points in college. The key is that he is also infatuated. With all these advantages, he will be the most ideal Prince Charming in the minds of women in the future society. And this Prince Charming only favors Su Su. If it were in the past, Su Su, who was in love with Xie Qingyan, would make girls envious and jealous. But now, Su Su, who hurt Xie Qingyan, makes people hate her. Su Su didn't argue with Bai Luoluo, nor with anyone else. There was no point in arguing. Xie Qingyan treated her well now and had no regrets. Even though Su Su was violated by Yiyu, Xie Qingyan was willing to continue loving her. In the eyes of the group of girls in front of him, this added a lot of points. Everyone knows how the plot will develop in the future. Xie Qingyan will still be like a protective umbrella, protecting the weak Su Su from wind and rain. Then the hurt caused by Yiyu will eventually pass. Although this will be an indelible scar in the hearts of Su Su and Xie Qingyan, they will graduate well, get married, and have a lovely child. Blah. The more Xie Qingyan acted like this, the more Su Su looked filthy, and the more she hated him. In peacetime, This was just a love story between an ordinary man and woman and some trivial events that happened around them. After packing the last piece of clothing, Su hooked her finger at Bai Luoluo, who was standing at the door. Bai Luoluo snorted with disdain, not taking Su's provocative gesture seriously at all. She clasped her arms across her chest, strode in front of Su, raised her hand, and planned to slap Su in the face as a protest. Su quickly picked up the mouse on the desk, and with her other hand pulled Bai Luoluo's shoulder. The mouse was wrapped around Bai Luoluo's neck. Su pulled hard, and the mouse cable tightly clamped Bai Luoluo's neck. Which, there's a road to heaven but you don't take it. There's no door to Hades but you insist on breaking in? At the door, the girls watching seemed to have not expected that Su, who had always been as docile as a little white rabbit, would behave like this. They were all stunned for a moment, and then screamed in fear. Bai Luoluo inside the door was seen being strangled by the mouse cable little by little, her hands flapping in the air and her legs weakly kneeling on the ground. Su had already moved behind Bai Luoluo, and her delicate white hands were holding both ends of the mouse cable as if with iron, and she was pulling it a little bit with an expressionless face. Su, please let go. Bai Luoluo is going to die. She's going to die. Someone at the door shouted something, and Su looked up. The girls who had criticized her from a moral high ground were all scared and ran away. Only one girl wearing glasses and a suspender skirt, who was a little braver, was left standing outside the door. Su, if you kill Bai Luoluo, you'll go to jail too. Why bother? Do you two have some irreconcilable hatred? Someone has already called the security guards.
Shushu, let go.
The girl with glasses and overalls was so anxious that she kept stomping her feet outside the door. Seeing Su's ruthless look, she had no doubt that as long as Su wanted, Bai Luoluo would die in their dormitory today. At this time, Bai Luoluo, who was kneeling on the ground, was foaming at the mouth, her eyes were drooping, and her tongue was half sticking out. The BB cream on her face could not cover her purple complexion. She looked nothing like the usual campus goddess and was no different from a hanged ghost. Su was still thinking whether he should use a little more effort to kill Bai Luoluo in advance, because Bai Luoluo was really annoying. Su, the security guard is here. Let go. Yan Jinger ran to the balcony, looked downstairs, and ran back. They are really here, let go quickly. I am not lying to you. It seemed that she really heard a long series of footsteps coming up the stairs. Su was a little surprised. Has her supernatural power begun to awaken? Otherwise, how could her hearing be so good? So, now is really not the time to kill Bai Luoluo? After a slight hesitation, Su's hand loosened, and Bai Luoluo fell softly to the ground. In an instant, Su picked up the backpack on the chair with one hand and ran out of the dormitory like a fly. The glasses and overalls who had been standing at the door of the dormitory stepped aside and did not chase Su. After Su left, she hurried into the dormitory to check on Bai Luoluo's condition. This check shocked Li Xiaoyu. Bai Luoluo's breath was so weak that she couldn't detect it at all. Su ran out of the dormitory, thinking about the man with glasses and overalls all the way. She ran down the other staircase of the dormitory building with her backpack on her back. It was not until she ran out of the school gate that she remembered that the man with glasses and overalls, who was still quite courageous, was her roommate Li Xiaoyu. In fact, Bai Luoluo is also Su's roommate, but she is the daughter of a wealthy family. After she was admitted to Xiangtan University, her parents bought her a house near Xiangtan University. Bai Luoluo usually does not live in the dormitory. Today, she may want to make fun of Su, so after class, she made a special trip back to the dormitory. As a result, she did not expect that she would die here. As for Li Xiaoyu, Su had long forgotten whether she was good or bad, because she had not seen Li Xiaoyu since the end of the world. But the other roommate, what was her name? Oh, yes, Sanxin. Li Anxin and Li Xiaoyu were cousins. They were admitted to the same university and lived in the same dormitory together. However, Li Xiuyu disappeared without a trace after the end of the world, while Li Anxin followed them all the way to Chuncheng and became the backbone of the Xiongda team. Su Su didn't hate Li Anxin, but she couldn't like her either. During the time when Xiao AI disappeared, Li Anxin really knew nothing about Su Su's madness, but after she knew it, she chose to stand by and watch. So Su Su didn't kill her and let her do whatever she wanted and didn't care about her. Each dormitory is equipped with 2 staircases, and the dormitories are located on both sides of a long corridor. Su Su had already left Building 1 before the security guard rushed up. After leaving the dormitory gate, Su Su was not in a hurry and even made a big detour to come to the fire back door. People were coming and going along the way, but no one's attention was on Su Su. They were all rushing to dormitory building number 1 to watch the excitement. They only knew that 2 girls were fighting on the 5th floor, and it seemed that there was a murder case, but they never expected that Su Su was one of the protagonists of the incident. This is not unrelated to the calm expression on Su Su's face. There were very few people at the back door of the fire station. Apart from the cars coming and going on the road, there was no pedestrian. Su Su stood outside the rusty iron gate, biting her lip. She thought for a moment, her mind sank, and she closed her eyes. She felt that her fingers were indeed a little wet, but not enough to condense water. So, she gave up the idea of using her supernatural powers, turned around, found a big stone on the grass, and pounded on the lock on the iron gate. Her strength had indeed increased. An ordinary girl could not break the iron lock no matter how hard she hammered it with a stone. But Su Su only needed 2 or 3 hits and a little force to break the palm-sized iron lock. She snorted triumphantly, threw away the stone in her hand, pulled off the iron chain on the iron gate, and threw it into the grass. Okay, classmates, I have done what I should do. Although you have been very unkind to me, my spirit of repaying evil with kindness is still worthy of praise. Su Su patted the dust off her hands, muttering to herself, turned around and walked to the side of the road, hailed a taxi, and headed straight for the Apple Villa district. Things turned out like this not because Su Su was inconsiderate, but because she had already thought it through. Even though Bai Luoluo was breathing out but not breathing in, which looked scary, she could still be saved as long as she was sent to the hospital in time. At worst, she would just stay in the hospital until the end of the world, and then Su Su would go and reap Bai Luoluo's head. The reason why Bai Luoluo was allowed to survive was Su Su's previous concerns. Killing a person and injuring a person are completely different crimes, and the impact on society is also different. If Bai Luoluo was injured, at most all the teachers and students in the school would notice Su Su, and the police would summon her. If Bai Luoluo was killed and Su Su ran away again, she would become a wanted criminal nationwide. Then, would she have to rent a house and stockpile supplies in the 45 days before the end of the world? The agent was a young man with short hair. He bent down and waved to Su Su in the car. After Su Su paid the bill to the taxi driver and came out, the agent began to introduce her enthusiastically. This Apple Villa area is inhabited by rich people. Miss Su, you made the right choice to rent a house here. This house is a good choice whether it is a place for your parents to stay when traveling or for you to live in the future. The environment here is elegant, and the scenery is beautiful. Blah blah blah. Judging from the agent's expression, he still hoped that Su Su would rent the house for a longer period of time. She did not answer the agent and paid the balance to the agent from the ATM machine at the gate of the villa area. The two signed the contract on the spot. Without the agent's guidance, Su Su took the key and access card and entered the villa area by herself. Because it is where rich people live, the rent of 5,000 per month is considered cheap. The protection measures at the gate are very good. It is a closed orange steel door. If the owner drives in, the steel door will open from left to right. If you walk in like Su Su, you can swipe the access card and a small door will open on the steel door that only allows one person to enter. At least at the beginning of troubled times, with such a gate and such protection, things in here won't be too chaotic. After walking in the villa area for a long time, Su Su walked for about 2 or 3 hours because she was not familiar with the route. She finally found the villa she rented. She stood outside and looked at the surrounding environment for a while. The appearance was exactly the same as the pictures posted by the agent on the internet. The interior was also well decorated, spacious and bright, with clean windows and desks, but it lacked a bit of the breath of life. She walked around upstairs and downstairs and thought that the owner of the villa might have never lived in it since he bought it. There were only a few bed frames upstairs, which looked quite expensive, and there were no cotton sheets or quilt covers. The same was true in the kitchen. There were all kinds of pots and pans, big and small, but not a grain of rice. There was a brand new 3-door refrigerator there, but when she opened the door, there was still a smell of plastic. Sue frowned, rubbed her empty stomach, and looked down at her flat belly. "I'm sorry, baby. I made you hungry." Mommy was so happy that she forgot to eat. Plagues were rampant, disasters abounded, and humans began to transform into zombies. In that desperate world, some humans also underwent mutations. In the end times, these mutated humans were called psychics. Psychics are divided into 5 categories: gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Psychics who have awakened these 5 categories mutate based on the basic elements. Some people will undergo secondary mutations based on these basic elements. But no matter how they mutate, in the end these psychics are divided into 3 categories, just like the spell attacks, physical attacks, and healing professions in the game. Each of the 3 has its own strengths. The physique of water and fire-type psychics may not be as strong and durable as those of the other types of psychics, but compared to ordinary people, they are still much stronger. Even for a water-type psychic like Sue, it doesn't matter if he doesn't eat for a few days. He can still be alive and well after being hungry for a few days. But she still forgot that she was still an ordinary person. Maybe her superpowers were awakening, but they were still far from her physical condition 12 years later. She walked around the kitchen and didn't find anything to eat. Her knees went weak, and she almost fell to the ground. In the huge kitchen, the luxurious European light yellow floor tiles were decorated with intricate patterns. The sunlight outside the window swayed slightly, and a green shadow swayed in the wind, as if waving to Sue. She tilted her head and saw a pomelo tree growing just outside the window. In the November weather, the pomelos on the tree had grown very large. Sue was not polite. She rolled up her sleeves, lifted her skirt, and climbed up the tree with a fruit knife in her mouth. This action was something Sue would never dare to do before the end of the world in her previous life, but now she was very familiar with climbing trees. After climbing up the tree, she picked a grapefruit, broke it open on the spot, and ate it directly, without caring whether it was sour or not. After eating it, she picked another one. She sat on the tree trunk and ate 4 or 5 grapefruits. After breaking each grapefruit, it was as big as a small ball played by children. After eating until her stomach was bloated, Sue slid down from the tree, ran back to the living room, lay on the thick and soft leather sofa, and took a nap. When she woke up, it was already dark. Sue stood up from the sofa and touched her forehead.
Great.
She had a fever. Fever is a sign that the superpowers have officially awakened. Of course, it is also a sign that those who are about to become zombies have begun to become zombies. In November, there will be many people with fever symptoms like Sue. This fever will be intermittent for a few days and then stop for a few days. One person's fever will become a fever for many people, and finally it will evolve into a social flu, and then completely evolve into a plague. Sue felt a little cold, so she took out a silver-white lightweight short-down jacket and a pair of jeans from her backpack and put them on. Then she looked at her cell phone, which she had turned to silent mode. During the time she was asleep, her parents called her several times. Sue called back, but no one answered. She then called the home landline, but no one answered either. They might have been on their way to Xiangqing. "It's good to get going," Sue nodded, and went out to prepare supplies with her bank card and villa key access card. She had just eaten so many grapefruits that her stomach was full, so walking for 2 or 3 hours was not a problem at all for her. She really walked for 2 hours and walked out of the Apple Villa area slowly. Sue then called a car using a taxi app and arrived at a nearby farmer's market before 8 o'clock in the evening. Because it was already evening, most of the vegetable and meat vendors had closed their stalls. There were still a few stores selling grains, oils, and dry goods open, but they were also planning to pack up and close. Boss, give me 30,000 yuan worth of rice. Su walked into a rice shop and asked to buy 30,000 yuan worth of rice. The shop owner was a chubby man in his 40s, with a cigarette in his mouth and a big gold ring on his hand. He looked up at Su and laughed with contempt. Hey kid, do you know that 30,000 yuan is a lot of rice? As he spoke, the rice shop owner took out a large white sack with one hand and placed it next to Su's feet. He held a cigarette between his fingers and pointed at the sack on the ground and said, "This is 50 kilograms of rice, 3 yuan per kilogram. You want 30,000 yuan worth of rice? Are you sure? Well, then give me 4,000 yuan. Please deliver it to Building 520 of Apple Villa District." Hey, Miss Qianjin, no wonder you don't understand the market. Is this your first time shopping on your own? The rice shop owner smiled again and looked Su up and down. Su looked so weak and frail that she looked like a student who didn't care about worldly things. He guessed it right. The people living in the Apple Villa District were all rich people. If Su wanted to deliver rice to the Apple Villa District, what else could she be but a rich lady? Su nodded with a wooden face, neither admitting nor denying. She just counted the money for the rice shop owner, left her address, and turned around to go to the next store. At the next house, Su did not plan to buy rice anymore. She only had tens of thousands of yuan in total, and she didn't know whether Yi Yu would honor his request for resettlement funds. Maybe Yi Yu had already run away. She would just buy 4,000 yuan worth of rice first. After the end of the world, she could still go out to find supplies, and rice would be free at that time. The next store was a dry goods store. Su bought some white fungus, red dates, barley, yuba, black fungus, wolfberry walnuts, salted fish, and bacon. These can be used to make soup. From now on, Su can make a pot of soup every day. Pregnant women must ensure nutritional intake so that the baby in their belly can grow strong. After buying dry goods, Su had only 20,000 yuan left in her pocket. She took a bus to the supermarket. It was 9 o'clock in the evening. The big supermarkets in Xiangcheng were open 24 hours a day. When Su went there, the supermarket was bustling. She walked around the supermarket and bought some meat. The quantity was not much, as long as it was enough for her to eat in the next few days. She would buy frozen meat later, so there was no rush. Then she looked at the electrical appliance area and saw a white bear baby pot. The green baby pot is only a little bit big, but it is very good for making porridge, bone soup, etc. For children. It is not expensive, less than 100 yuan, so Su bought it. After buying the baby pot, she went crazy and only focused on baby products. She bought N-size diapers and S-size diapers, each costing 1,000 yuan. She also bought 3, 4, 5, or 6 sets of soft and close-fitting clothes. She also bought a water bottle, a milk bottle, and 5 of each for spare use. She also bought pacifiers of various sizes, a milk warmer, a bathtub for her little love, toys, nursing underwear, etc., and she spent tens of thousands of yuan in just one go. The salesperson in the maternal and infant section was so happy that he couldn't stop smiling. He said, "It's free delivery, it's free delivery, it's free delivery." After shopping in the supermarket for a few hours, Su had only 10,000 yuan left. She frowned and thought about it, and decided to save it for a visit to the building materials market tomorrow. So she took a taxi back to the villa. Following her car was the supermarket deliverman. The things she bought filled up a small truck, so she had to drive a truck to deliver them. After opening the door of the villa and waiting for the delivery man to move all the things she bought into the living room, Su put her hands on her hips and looked at the things on the ground. She then ran to the backyard to pick 2 grapefruits and ate them. Only then did she lie down on the sofa and fall asleep contentedly. The next morning, Su woke up covered in sweat. She sat on the sofa, lifted the long coat on her body, raised her head and touched her forehead, which was full of water. The water was dripping down Su's palms drop by drop. She was startled and stood up and ran to the kitchen. She found a clean water cup, clenched her hand into a fist, and squeezed it hard. A few drops of water fell from her palm into the cup. Although the amount was not much, they were dripping one by one, but it was a continuous stream. Almost half a cup of water had dripped. Su picked up the cup and held it under the sunlight to take a closer look. The water was very good, clear. She took another sip, and it was sweet and moist. Her water-related ability had begun to awaken. If nothing unexpected happened, she would be able to enter the state earlier than in her previous life. In her previous life, Su cried for more than a month because of what you did to her. During that time, she had intermittent fevers, but she just thought it was because of her weak constitution. She didn't even remember if she had ever woken up from the bed covered in water. Anyway, when she knew that she had awakened the water-related ability, it was already several months after the end of the world. At that time, the amount of water that Su could release was not as much as it is now, just a shallow sip. She felt that she should plan the practice of her superpowers into her daily schedule. The saying that diligence leads to success and laziness leads to failure is absolutely true. Superpowers do not depend solely on natural talents. The more times you practice, the more comfortable you will be with them, and the more powerful they will become. Making up her mind, Su found some clothes to change at her backpack and took a comfortable hot bath. Then the supplies from the rice shop owner and the dry goods store owner were delivered. After everything was packed, Su cooked some white rice for herself and fried some meat she bought in the supermarket last night. She ate it all in one go. Now she had to take in the nutrition of 2 people. If she didn't eat more, what would happen if Xiao AI was hungry? Eating too much. In order to help digestion, Su took another 2-hour walk and walked out of the Apple Villa area. Today, she planned to go to the building materials market to have a look. On the way back, she would stop by the farmer's market to buy some side dishes for this period of time and chop some bones for soup. Just as she walked out of the gate of the villa area, Su looked up and was stunned for a moment. There was a black military jeep parked in the sun. Leaning against the door of the jeep was Yiyu, wearing jungle combat uniform. Yiyu had his hands in his trouser pockets and a Furong King cigarette in the corner of his mouth, looking like a typical, "How come he is here?" Seeing Su coming out, Yiyu straightened his body, his feet in black combat boots, as if standing in a military posture, and smiled at Su embarrassedly. "I was still thinking about how to get in, and you came out. How did you know I was here? What are you doing here?"
Susu was delighted.
"Are you here to give me money?"
No.
Hearing Su say this, Yiyu's smile fell, and he put on a more serious look. "Hey girl, your classmate, by something, is half dead. He's still lying in the hospital."
So what?
"So, I put this matter on hold for you." Yiyu smiled shyly, then looked at Su with concern. "Bai's family wanted to call the police, and the director of your area happened to be a relative of one of my comrades in arms, so he told me about it. As for your residence, a quick check revealed that you rented a house here yesterday, and the agency has your ID registration information." Su rolled her eyes very obviously at Yiyu. She really didn't know how to evaluate Yiyu as a person. He was a bit evil. He thought he had helped her and even came to her to get a reward. But Su didn't say anything, and Yiyu seemed a little embarrassed. He threw away the cigarette in his hand, touched his shaved head, and was about to say something when Su turned sideways and slapped the military jeep behind him and asked, "This car is great. Can you give it to me? What do you want this for?" "I'll get you something else, something for a girl." Yiyu is not stingy with this car. This is the car used by their team. It is bulletproof and waterproof and costs a lot. An ordinary girl can't afford such a good car. Besides, if he gives this car to Su, it will be a problem for Su to feed it with oil. This car is a gas guzzler. If she really wants a car, you can get her a car suitable for her in minutes. Su pouted and shook her head. "No, either give me this car, or nothing at all. I don't like cars that are like paper tigers that will break in a bucket. They take up too much space." It's not that Su is greedy, but if he could have such a car, it would be extremely convenient to encounter zombies or find supplies in the apocalypse. However, it is normal that you did not give it to him. It is obvious that this car is not his personal property. Maybe it belongs to their special forces. If such public property is misappropriated, a report must be filed, not to mention losing, damaging, or giving it away. Thinking of this, Su put the special watch on her left wrist to the side. She just found out yesterday that this watch has lighting, night vision, and other functions. What a good thing. I hope Yu doesn't remember it and doesn't take it back. Yu turned his head aside and pretended not to see Su's little action. When Su walked out of the bathroom door yesterday, he found his watch on Su's wrist. Don't say it, such a thin hand, wearing such a rough watch, is quite charming. If she likes it, she can wear it. It's just a watch. Just file a wear and tear report to the team, and it will be done. Seeing that Su no longer mentioned the new car, Yu cleared his throat, thought for a moment, and could only say, if you like this car, it doesn't matter if I lend it to you for a few days, but you still have to return it. Do you have a driver's license? Yes. Su couldn't help but smile. Thank you. Can I borrow it for 2 months? 44 days is also fine. You're borrowing it for such a long time. Yu hesitated for a moment. How would he explain this to his superiors if they asked him about it? Then he looked at the bright smile on Su's face and nodded immediately. Okay, I'll try to fool you for 2 months.
Done.
The car is hers. Su reached out and touched the new car. The cars used by special forces are different. The material feels very high-end. In the 12 years of the apocalypse, she has never driven such a good car. Su touched the military jeep around, like a little girl who got a new toy, with a very happy expression on her face. Seeing this, Yu beside her felt relieved. He had done something wrong to others and had tossed and turned all night. His usually simple mind was now filled with 1,000 thoughts for the first time. Now, seeing Su smile, he felt better. Seeing that Su had already opened the driver's seat and sat on it spontaneously, Yu quickly raised his foot and climbed onto the passenger seat. Just as he was about to teach Su how to drive the car, Su turned the key, stepped on the accelerator, and whoosh, the military jeep shot out like an arrow. Yu couldn't help but whistle and turned to look at Su. Wow, that's really fast. Good technique. Aha! Su shrugged her shoulders and drove her car at full speed on the road. Taking the opportunity of practicing driving, she stopped at several nearby gas stations. These would be her targets for robbery from now on. Hey, sister, I have something to tell you. Explain. Can we go back to class? Yu, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was not at all annoyed by Su's high speed. Seeing that Su was in a good mood, he began to persuade her earnestly. I have already greeted everyone in the school. No teacher or leader will ask you anything. Go back to class, study hard, and contribute to society after graduation.
Puff.
Su slammed the brakes and stopped her car on the side of the road. She turned to look at Yu in the passenger seat and couldn't help but laughed sarcastically. Contribute to society? Go back to class?
No.
I really want to see if this man who looks exactly like Xiao AI will still say something like serve the society after the end of the world. After the end of the world, humans will either become gods or ghosts. Why would they still serve the society? You idiot. Yi looked at Su and opened his mouth, but said nothing. He lowered his head dejectedly. He sighed deeply. This big and strong man sighed so many times in the past 2 days that his teammates wanted to kick him. No one understood the pain in his heart. When he watched Su, step by step, leaving the beautiful ranks of the motherland's flower buds, Yu felt that he was really a ruthless rascal who destroyed the flowers. We're here. Get off the bus. Seeing that Yu stopped talking, Su pointed to the bus stop sign outside the car door. Yu didn't move, so Su raised one foot and kicked Yu's waist. He opened the passenger door, turned a wheel, and jumped out of the passenger seat. Su drove the car away in a flash, as if she was afraid that Yu would chase her. Yu wanted to laugh. He just lent her the car. Why did she drive away so fast? She didn't even say goodbye to him. Su was in a very good mood because she stole a military jeep. She drove her new car all the way to the building materials market. In the building materials market, Su bought some plastic film for greenhouses and some poles to support the plastic film. 10,000 yuan was spent casually. Su had no experience in technical work like growing a vegetable greenhouse. In the 12 years since the end of the world, all her energy had been used to kill people and find Xiao AI. When she was short of supplies, She would take tasks in exchange for points, and then use the points to exchange for supplies. She was really not good at building a greenhouse. But if you are not good at it, you can learn. On the way back, Sue bought some vegetables, then sat on the sofa with her mobile phone and started searching on the internet for how to build a greenhouse. She spent the whole afternoon looking for it until she felt hungry. Then she put down her mobile phone and went into the kitchen to cook. Wait, as if she had forgotten something, Sue picked up a plate of freshly fried vegetables, sat at the kitchen table, and ate while taking out her cell phone from her down jacket pocket. Her cell phone didn't ring all day, her parents didn't call her, and she didn't receive any messages from her parents. What was going on? Jishur was not far from Xiangqing. It only took an hour or so by plane, or 5 hours by bus. 2 days and 1 night had passed, and not only did her parents not come, they didn't even send her a message. Did they run out of credit on their phone? Sue dialed the home landline, and the sound was normal, with no reminder for her to pay. She then called her parents' cell phone, but it was turned off. It was turned off. Sue frowned and bit her chopsticks, thinking, in such a peaceful era, what kind of big thing could happen that would cause parents to abandon a crying daughter and turn off their phones and disappear? She felt that she should go back to Jia City to have a look. After all, the distance was not far. If she drove fast from Xiangqing on the highway, she could get there in 4 hours. In her previous life, her parents died on the way south in search of her. In this life, it was Sue's turn to find them. She thought it was great and not a hassle at all, and she was happy to do it. She started preparing as soon as she said she was going to leave. Sue just took some clothes for changing, changed into a loose and comfortable yoga outfit, put on a down jacket, tied her long hair into 2 pigtails, and prepared an insulated lunchbox with some hot meals and dishes. She drove her military jeep and sped towards the highway to Jia City. On the way, Sue also discovered one of the advantages of her car. This car has a special license plate, which means it is exempt from highway tolls. If she recharges her car at the gas station, she doesn't have to pay for the gas. So the journey was so smooth that Sue was amazed. At this time of November, the country doesn't have any major holidays, and there won't be long vacations. There are not many people traveling, and the highway is also smooth. However, when the car was about to reach Jia City, about half an hour's drive away, there was a gas station with several cars stuck inside. Sue parked her car at a gas station. She had actually filled up her car with gas when she first got on the highway. She stopped again to fill up the 2 oil bottles in the trunk. Gasoline is a good thing. Since she can get gas for free with her military license, why not put in more gas just in case? The road to the city is not open yet. The driver of a car in front of him stuck his head out and asked the gas station staff in a loud voice. The staff nodded as he was filling up his gas station and replied, "It's not accessible. The cars that went to Chanda City 3 days ago couldn't get out. You'd better not join in the fun. It's just a waste of time. How can it be efficient?" Seeing that the gas tank was full, the driver threw a few banknotes to the gas station staff, drove away cursing. This gas station is located at the fork of the city and Jia City. Some cars that want to go north will be faster if they go through the city. Similarly, if the road to the south is congested, it is also a good choice to choose to go through the downtown area of the city. Sue drove the car forward, rolled down the window of the driver's seat, tilted her head to look at the staff, and asked casually, "What's wrong with the city? Why is it so congested? Who knows? It seems like there was a landslide on the viaduct over there. The viaduct collapsed, and all cars entering the city couldn't get out? There was no report on the news." "Oh, you said that the cars can't get out, and the interview car can't get in either?" The staff looked at Sue as if she were a fool. It was obvious that they were deceived by Sue's appearance again and thought that Sue was some rich girl who was kept in seclusion in a secluded place. Sue raised her eyebrows, curled her lips indifferently, unbuckled her seatbelt, and got out of the car, took out 2 oil cans from the trunk, and while watching the staff filling the oil cans with oil, some information went through her mind. It seemed that this kind of disaster was not reported in the news before the end of the world. Even if it might have been reported, Sue did not care about current affairs in her previous life. She didn't know whether the city had collapsed or not. After refueling, Su got in the car and continued driving forward. In the night, when passing the fork in the highway leading to the city, he deliberately glanced over there. It was pitch black. The dense branches on both sides of the highway were like the tentacles of a monster. When the wind blew, they made a whooshing sound. She drove all the way back home and found her home following the house number she remembered. She fished out the key from under the doormat and opened the door. A familiar smell hit her in the face. Su's heart trembled, and she felt a mixture of emotions. During the 12 years since the apocalypse, Su has returned home many times. Although she has been looking for Xiao AI, she has not forgotten to inquire about her parents along the way. Although her home in Jia City is buried in a pile of zombies, Su has been in and out several times. Every time she comes back, she has different expectations in her heart. Sometimes she wants to see her home, sometimes she wants to remember her parents, and sometimes she just wants to come back and smell the wood fragrance of the old furniture. In such a drifting era, Su, who lost her little love and her parents, lived like a rootless duckweed. Wherever she went, her heart was empty. Sometimes she felt so empty that she wanted to come back to rest and find some memories to support herself to move forward. Only in this way, by coming back here, could she recharge her empty battery. Su approached her home and looked around. Her house was not big, with 2 bedrooms and 2 living rooms of only 70 square meters. Her mother was a full-time housewife and her father was a bus driver in Jia City. They didn't make much money, but it was enough for the family of 3. Walking in step by step and taking a walk around the house, Su's fingers ran over the familiar furnishings one by one. They were clean, showing signs that her parents had lived in the house 2 days ago. She bent down and placed the slippers that her father had kicked off when he went out neatly on the shoe rack at the door. Then she sat on a small double sofa, lowered her head, and began to cry. It was her fault. She shouldn't have asked her parents to go to Xiangqing. Instead, she should have returned to Jia City and taken her parents to Xiangqing herself. Her parents disappeared before the end of the world. The chaotic world was about to begin. Where could she find her parents? While crying, Su suddenly raised her head and thought of the city. Right now, the most chaotic part of the entire Jieshi to Xiangqing Road section is Deshi. Didn't the cars that went in 3 days ago still haven't gotten out of Deshi? Then she went to Deshi to look for someone. This is still an orderly society. No matter how chaotic it is, it's not as chaotic as the end of the world. It's just looking for 2 living people. How difficult can it be? Su stood up and made up her mind to move her parents' bed. She remembered that their family had 2 bank cards, her father's salary card and her father's private card. Because Father Su was the only one who earned money in the family, his salary card was given to Mother Su for safekeeping. However, Su knew since childhood that Father Su also secretly hid a private card, which was full of money that Mother Su didn't know about. For example, Father Su's various bonuses and the cash inheritance left to Father Su by his grandparents were all in this card. On weekdays, Father Su only secretly used the money in this card to buy some cigarettes and alcohol and basically did not touch the money in it. Since Su was a child, Father Su had never concealed it from her and always told her, "This is your future dowry money. Hide it somewhere and don't let your mother find it." Su pushed open the big bed of her parents without much effort, stretched out a hand into the gap, took out a sock covered with dust, and pulled out the private card that Father Su had saved with great difficulty from the sock, smiled, touched her lower abdomen, and said, "AI, my dear, your grandpa is good at hiding things. Isn't he? Let's take this money and go find your grandpa and grandma first, and then take them to Xiangqing. Let's go." Although she said she was leaving, Su didn't actually leave immediately. She ransacked the house as usual, taking all the edible rice, vegetables, eggs, as well as pots, knives, rice cookers, and the like. She then took her parents and her clothes for all seasons, her mother's gold jewelry and various jade collections, and some quilts, mattresses, and sheets from the house. She filled the back seat and trunk of the military jeep to the brim. When she left, Su also took the family photo frame that was on the shelf at the door. She found an ATM in Jie City and withdrew tens of thousands of yuan from Sue's father's private card. She then checked the balance and found that there was still 230,000 yuan left on the card. Then she went to the nearest Kennyway and had a big fast food meal. She also packed more than 10 family bucket meals, jumped in a jeep, and headed for the city. To go from Jie City to the city by highway, the journey only takes an hour or so. Sue thought about what the staff at the gas station on the highway said, that people who had entered the city 3 days ago had not yet found their way out, so she chose not to take the highway and go directly on the national highway. It would be slower to take the national highway, and it would take about 3 hours to get there due to the twists and turns. The journey was relatively smooth, but the closer they got to the city, the more traffic police there were on the national highway, and then Sue saw the checkpoint. There was a row of cars stuck in front of the checkpoint. Some cars were let in, but some were not. There were many cars wanting to enter the city, but there were more cars coming out of the city. Everyone was driving very slowly. Sue rolled down the window and heard the owner of a car in front arguing with the traffic police on duty. "I really have something urgent to do in Jinda City. Can you afford to compensate me for the delay?" The car owner, who was arguing with the traffic police, was driving a BMW. It was obvious that he was going to enter the city to discuss business, but the traffic police refused to let him in. No matter how the car owner gave him cigarettes or money, they just said he couldn't enter. Later, the car owner got angry, loosened his bow tie, pointed at the traffic police's nose, and started cursing. The traffic policeman was not one to be trifled with. He slapped the car owner's finger that was pointing at his nose and started fighting with him. The car owners behind him cheered and said, "Fight, fight, brother, come on. Let us pass. My wife is giving birth in the city. I need to go through." Some cars, like the BMW owners, are not allowed to enter no matter what, but some cars can. Sue sat in the driver's seat and observed carefully. The cars that can enter are all four-circle cars. The four-circle cars are government cars of the Chinese government. So the cars that can enter the city are basically people in the government. The collapse of an overpass concerns the country's image and is naturally enough to attract the government's attention. It is also natural for leaders at all levels to investigate and visit. It was already 3 or 4 in the morning. The stars in the sky were hanging high in the sky, shining with cold light, shining brightly on the world. On the ground, the national highway leading to the city was congested. The traffic police worked all night to clear the traffic. Sue also slept all night. Finally, it was her car's turn. The traffic police guarding the checkpoint glanced at her license plate, saluted, and let her go immediately. After entering the first checkpoint and driving for 10 minutes, she encountered another checkpoint. It usually took Sue more than 2 hours to run the road that could be completed in half an hour. Then she found that the traffic police were gone, and instead, soldiers were guarding the checkpoint. This is somewhat alarming. It either proves that the collapse of the viaduct in the city was not simply a collapse of an elevated bridge, or that the collapse of the viaduct was very serious, so serious that the military had to be mobilized. Then Sue's car was stopped by a soldier in camouflage clothes in front. This time her military license plate was not as useful as before. The soldier walked up with a gun, stood by Sue's car window, stood at attention, saluted, posed in a standard military posture, then knocked on Sue's car window, signaling Sue to open the window. She rolled down the window, and the soldier was immediately speechless. He was about to speak, but when he saw Sue's face, he couldn't say a word. Then he signaled Sue to park the jeep on the side of the road, and he went back to the checkpoint. Perhaps the other party did not expect that the driver of their army's jeep was actually a woman, a little girl who looked to be in her teens. The key point was that this little girl looked so weak and innocent than a rabbit, and it was obvious that she was not a female soldier. The car was either stolen, or the little girl was a direct relative of an officer, and the officer's rank must not be low. Sue sat in the car, staring at the other party as he entered the command room to make a phone call. Her white and slender fingers gripped the steering wheel, her fingertips tapping lightly on the black leather cover as she considered the current situation. Should she rush in or go back home? Rushing in would never work. If she didn't want to be shot to pieces by those armed soldiers, it would be better not to take this route. If she went back home, she would have to hide the car somewhere and then walk into the city, which would be troublesome and tiring. Although she had traveled long distances before after the apocalypse, it would not be easy for her to find her parents and bring them out given her current physical condition.
Soon, Su got the answer.
After passing several checkpoints, her car was stopped by Yiyu. Yes, it was Yiyu again.
Hi.
Yiyu stood in the sun, raised his hand and greeted Su in the car with a smile. Behind him was a new checkpoint. Obviously, he was not here to guard the checkpoint, but he received a message and ran here to block people because his clothes were particularly different. He was wearing black and green bulletproof equipment, a small communicator on his ear, an iron helmet on his head, and there must be 2 daggers in his military boots. Su held the car steady, rolled down the window, and waited for Yiyu to approach. She placed her hands on the roof of her car, bent slightly, and looked at Su in the driver's seat. Su stared at him for a while, and when Yiyu didn't speak, she slowly opened her mouth and asked softly, "What happened in the city?" "The viaduct collapsed." "You must be kidding me. Would you mobilize your special forces when a viaduct collapses?"
Yeah.
"How did you know I'm from the special forces?" Yiyu's eyes widened, and only the whites of his eyes could be seen on his face that was tanned red by the sun. His strange tone made Su unable to help but squinted at him. "It's written on your face." Yiyu actually reached out and touched his face, then realized that he was being mocked by Su. He felt it was boring, so he waved his hand and did not ask how Su knew his identity. With a straight face, he asked again, "What are you doing in the city?" "The road ahead has been closed. Non-military vehicles can only go back home here." "Tell me what you want, and I'll do it for you." "My parents are missing. They may be in the city. I want to go in and find them." Su was really not polite. In the current situation, she could either force her way in or abandon the car and walk in. Neither of these 2 options was ideal, so she would have to trouble Yiyu. He had privileges and it would be easier for him to get things done inside. It was much easier for him to find people in such a big city like the city than for an ordinary person like her who drove a military jeep. "Give me your parents' ID numbers, phone numbers, and photos." Since Su asked so bluntly, Yu didn't bother to talk nonsense. He liked to be straightforward, and he also liked others to be straightforward. He immediately stretched out his palm and looked at the roof cover in front of the passenger seat. "There is a pen on it." Su unbuckled her seatbelt, stood up slightly, and took out a pen from the roof cover. She glanced at it casually.
It was waterproof and non-shedding.
Very good. She looked at the palm that Yu stretched out and understood what he meant. So she picked up the pen on her finger and wrote down her parents' names, ID numbers, and phone numbers on Yu's palm. The warm winter sun shone on Yu's hunched back. He looked down at Su's head. Yu felt the tip of the pen moving in his palm, and it felt itchy. He cursed inwardly and decided to go back and chop this deadly thing into pieces. "Okay, this is a picture of my parents." Su put away the pen and placed the family photo frame she brought from home on Yu's palm. He rolled his big hand, took the photo frame, and took his hand back from the car window. He nodded, serious, with a solemn and serious face, giving people a very reliable and trustworthy feeling, and said, "Okay, leave it to me. You go back and wait in Xiangqing. I'll send it to you after I find the person." After saying that, Yu turned around and left. Su tilted her head to look. Oh my god, Yu was carrying 2-foot-long sabers on his back. He was fully armed. What on earth had happened in the city? She frowned and shouted, "Yu." In the golden sunlight, Yu squinted his eyes and looked back. Su's head was sticking out of the window. After thinking for a while, he decided not to ask anything. He just stammered a few times and said sincerely, "Thank you." No matter what, she should say thank you to those who are willing to help her find her parents. Yu grinned, looking very happy. He raised his long arms, still holding Su's family photo in his hand, waved at Su, turned around and ran into the checkpoint without saying a word. Su's car stayed there for a while. She felt a little uneasy when she saw the situation inside and outside the city. The city had obviously entered a very high level of blockade and martial law, and it was definitely not a simple landslide. However, her current ability was too ordinary and she couldn't get in to take a look. She could only choose to trust you. After thinking for a long time, Su, under the watchful eyes of the soldiers in the checkpoint, decided to start the car and turn back. The water in the city was too deep, and she wanted to go home to practice her magic skills in seclusion. When her supernatural power was a little stronger, it was just at a city, and she could enter and leave as she pleased. The return journey was unusually smooth. There were layers of checkpoints when coming in, but when leaving, they were let through without any checks. Then they got on the national highway, and everything returned to normal. Although Su could hear a complaint or two when people occasionally stopped to refuel on the highway, people still treated it as a topic of conversation after dinner, and it had no impact on their lives. After spending several hours, Su returned to the Apple Villa in Xiangqing. She moved all the daily necessities out of the back of the Jeep, found a room on the second floor with a wide view, spread out the quilted sheets, took a hot bath, and had a comfortable sleep. As for the cultivation of superpowers, it cannot be rushed. There are many kinds of superpowers awakened by humans, and there is no fixed rate of growth. The methods of cultivation are also different. It should be said that each kind of superpower will have a different way of cultivation in each person. In the end times, the most common way of cultivation is to absorb energy and release energy. In the process of absorption and release, one can reach a level of maturity in the use of supernatural powers and then advance. There are many ways to obtain this energy. Eating and sleeping can allow the human body to obtain energy, but this method is relatively mild. The most effective way to obtain energy is to absorb crystal cores. Crystal cores exist in the bodies of zombies and mutant plants and animals. Naturally, superpowers also have them, but they are not called crystal cores, but spirit essences. Like crystal cores, spirit essences are also a carrier for storing energy. Some people don't even know that they have such things in their bodies. After some people know about it, they will not pay much attention to it. In fact, if the spirit essence is well controlled, it can make one's promotion speed go by leaps and bounds, just like others are changing quantitatively, while those who directly cultivate spirit essences are promoting qualitative changes. Su got up, her body soaked with water. She made a bowl of noodles, covered it with an egg, and sat at the kitchen table. After eating slowly, she walked to the sofa, sat cross-legged, put an empty bowl on the coffee table in front of her, and began to close her eyes and feel the water power in her body. At this stage, her superpowers are still out of control, so she often wakes up covered in water. This is the result of the energy in her body being slowly released during her sleep. After she wakes up and eats a full meal the next morning, the energy will slowly be replenished back into her body. What Su has to do now is to control it and condense the essence. Su was very familiar with such things in the 12 years since the end of the world. Maybe it was because of her mind. When she thought of her Xiao AI and that if she didn't become stronger, she wouldn't be able to find Xiao AI, she would be able to calm down faster than an ordinary person. Her body and mind would completely enter a state of silence. After reaching this state, Su felt as if she had entered into a strange world, a completely closed, yet vast and quiet world. Then she saw that all around her were densely packed flowing water lines, with occasional specks of silver light on those water lines. What Su had to do was to collect these silver lights and pile them up in a fixed place. At the beginning, those silver lights were difficult to capture. When Su tried to catch them, they ran very fast. When she stopped trying to catch them, they slowed down. They were even more naughty than Xiao AI. But no matter how they made trouble, Su remained calm, not anxious or irritable, not happy or angry. She treated it as playing hide and seek with Xiao AI. Slowly, she actually caught a silver light. With the first one, there will naturally be the second, the third, and the fourth. The silver light that Su had piled up on the spot gradually grew bigger, but after a while, just when Su went to grab the next silver light, the silver light that was originally piled up in one place scattered again and disappeared without a trace. Well, this is a very common phenomenon. Su didn't feel discouraged at all. She just continued to catch the silver lights, piled them together, watched them scatter, and then she continued. Just as she was sinking into this strange world, she saw Su sitting on the sofa with her eyes closed in concentration in the villa. There was a faint mist surrounding her. Every time it went in and ran out, it could run farther. Finally, when it was dark, the white mist was about to run out of the living room. For the last time, Su opened her eyes exhausted and looked around. Everything around her was white, as if a humidifier was turned on. The empty bowl in front of her was now filled with water.
Satisfied.
Before the end of the world began, she had already awakened her water-related abilities. If she persisted every day, she would be able to reach the level of using her abilities to fight monsters before the end of the world. Regarding the classification of levels of superpowers that appear after the end of the world, it is not based on the cool phenomena that a person can display, but on the intensity of energy that a person can mobilize. Regardless of whether they are basic elemental superpowers or secondary mutated superpowers, they are all divided into the same levels, and these levels represent the intensity of the energy that can be mobilized. Like Su, who had already awakened her superpowers but was completely unaware of it, she just felt her fingers were a little wet, as if she was sweating. She was not yet a superpower user. Later, she was able to release water, but she would still wake up covered in water from time to time. That was the initial sign of awakening superpowers. Now she is trying to control her superpowers. Once she has complete control over the superpowers in her body, she will reach the first level. Only then can she be considered to have truly fully awakened her superpowers. Therefore, the awakening of superpowers is a long process. Long after the end of the world, many people with water-related superpowers are still at the stage where they can only release water for people to drink. They have no experience and no one can give them experience. They can only slowly explore a path of cultivation suitable for their own advancement in the process of constantly releasing water. In her previous life, Su's way of advancing was to act as a reservoir in the team. Because she was pregnant with Xiao AI, she was unwilling to go out to fight monsters and level up, so her abilities advanced very slowly. Others had already reached level 2 and could create a wide variety of attacking and defensive moves, but she was still serving as a reservoir in the team. Later, somehow, her ability mutated, and she became an ice ability user, instantly jumping from level 1 to level 3. She became an expert in the team in both fighting monsters and defending. It was absolutely inevitable that she would be envied. In that world, being envied would put her in a dangerous situation. Many people came to her to ask for information, openly or secretly, about how to make their own abilities mutate. How to mutate as quickly as she did. What did she know? It could only be said that it was a secondary mutation caused by overindulgence. At the beginning, psychics will only be able to unleash the 5 elements of power, namely the 5 major series of powers of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Then some people will produce related mutations within these 5 major series of powers. For example, a water psychic will mutate into an ice psychic, a fog psychic, a lightning psychic, or a healing psychic. There are so many types that Su can't even count them all with her 10 fingers, let alone those she hasn't seen yet. This is called secondary mutation. The ability of secondary mutation can only be considered very rare. There may be only 10 people with the ability of the 5 elements among 100 ordinary people, but among these 10 people, there may be only one who will produce secondary mutation, or none at all. But this does not mean that the abilities of the 5 basic elements are not as good as those of secondary mutants. Can it be said that a 4th-level water ability user is not as good as a 3rd-level ice ability user? The power allocation of the 2 people was originally stronger at the 4th level. Even if the 3rd level was cold, a flood rushed over and washed away the ice. So, it doesn't matter what the superpower is. What matters is upgrading. After a whole day of gathering her spirit, Su was really tired. She got up, took a shower, cooked some food, and went out to the supermarket again. This time, she tried to buy more down jackets, thick thermal underwear, and some comfortable sportswear suitable for running and jumping. There are down jackets for both adults and children and thermal underwear of various sizes for men, women, young and old. She bought more sportswear for herself and fewer for her parents. After the end of the world, she neither needed her parents to go out and fight monsters, nor did she want them to flee in a hurry.
There was no need to buy so many sportswear for them.
Note that she only bought fewer sportswear for her parents. She still had to prepare a few more sets of down jackets and thermal underwear for her parents. In fact, shopping before the end of the world was like coming to another super-civilized world. Sue couldn't control her desire to buy. Every woman has a shopping desire that drives men crazy. It's not that women can't understand it. So many things that will only be needed after the end of the world can actually be snatched away, but Sue bought them now. After buying the crib, Sue bought a waist stool and a newborn multifunctional baby carrier. These two things are very important. Xiao AI was born in the end times, and Sue could not avoid going into battle to kill zombies and mutant plants and animals. She would never hand Xiao AI over to anyone because she had to go to battle, so Xiao AI had to run, jump, chase, and run with her. With a carrier to carry Xiao AI on her back, Sue would be much more convenient. Then she bought herself a few pairs of velvet and thick maternity pants, the kind with small trouser legs but a large waist and abdomen. This is also a must-have item, and you can't save money on this. These things cost Sue more than 10,000 yuan, but it didn't matter, because there were hundreds of thousands of yuan in Sue's father's private card, so Sue could spend it as she pleased. Afterwards, Sue drove to several outlets selling liquefied gas. Because she was buying it privately and did not have any qualifications, liquefied gas cylinders were flammable and explosive items, so she could not buy too many at one time in one store. So Sue found 4 or 5 liquefied gas online stores, ordered 5 cylinders of liquefied gas from each liquefied gas owner, paid a deposit, and agreed to have the liquefied gas delivered the next day. It was already past 9 o'clock in the evening. She looked down at her mobile phone and saw several missed calls and several unchecked text messages. Most of the missed calls were from Xie Qingyan. There was also a phone number marked class teacher, which was Sue's university class teacher. Sue ignored all these missed calls. She didn't want to say a word to these people now. She just wanted to receive Yu's call. But after Xie Qingyan and the head teacher, there were no more missed calls on the phone. Sue seemed a little discouraged and wondered if she should go to the city again. It didn't seem like she was putting all her hopes on Yu. While thinking this, her fingers had already clicked on the unread text messages, all of which were sent by Xie Qingyan. The first one, Sue, where are you now?
I'm worried about you.
Please don't hate me anymore, okay? Everything is my fault. I love you. Second, you haven't been to class for several days. My teachers and classmates are very worried about your safety. Where are you now? The third one, Sue, the moon is so round tonight. I am lying on the hospital bed, and I remember when I was in high school, I was injured while playing basketball. You stayed with me in the hospital. The moon was as round as it is today. Promise me, come back, okay? Article 4. You never know how much I love you, Sue. Don't be so cruel. There were 5, 6, 7, and 8 more messages, but Sue was too lazy to read them. From the first few messages, Sue knew that Xie Qingyan was in the hospital. She thought that her 2 kicks were serious or not. The serious thing was that she kicked Xie Qingyan into the hospital, but the not serious thing was why she didn't kick Xie Qingyan to death. She really wanted the end of the world to come quickly. She would rush to the hospital and kill Xie Qingyan right now. Sue was impatient. She drove back to her villa at night and began to prepare for the trip to the city tomorrow. She was packing in the bedroom when she heard a car sound outside the window. In such a large area, where maybe only a few people live, there was still a car sound so late at night? After listening carefully, she realized that the car was obviously heading towards her villa, so Sue put on her clothes, stuffed them into her backpack, stood up and walked out of the floor-to-ceiling window, leaned on the balcony, and looked out. The car lights in the distance just caught her eyes, and she squinted slightly. The car lights flashed again, turning from high beam to low beam. This confirmed that the car was indeed heading towards her villa. Su straightened her back quickly, and her two pigtails drew an arc on the balcony. Su had already run into the bedroom. She didn't even have time to put on her shoes. Her heart was beating fast and hard. She had a vague premonition of who was in the car, but she didn't dare to be too sure, so she could only hurried into the living room and open the two open doors. At this moment, the car had arrived in front of Su's villa yard. Su pressed the remote control button at the gate, and the iron gate of the yard opened automatically. The black military jeep drove directly into the yard. Yu jumped out of the parked car. He was covered in dust, with some mud on his feet. His face showed a tired look as if he had not slept well. He still had the two sabers on his back. It was obvious that he had not rested on the way here from the city. He just glanced at Su in the light of the car lights. His eyes fell on Su's bare feet. Without saying anything, he turned around, opened the back door of the Jeep, and let the people inside get out.
Mom.
When Su saw the dusty middle-aged woman, she couldn't help crying and ran up to her. She hugged the middle-aged woman's neck and kept shouting, "Mom, Mom, you're still alive. Mom, ouch, you're asking for death." The middle-aged woman slapped Su's arm. She was almost strangled to death by Su. She pretended to be vicious and cursed. "Your parents are alive and well. Why are you making a fuss? Stop crying. It's like we're parting forever. It's not a big deal." The middle-aged man who got off the car behind Su's mother was Su's father. He was a little chubby, with a cheerful face, of medium height, and wearing an old army green vest. Su looked up, let go of Su's mother, and hugged Su's father again, crying, "Dad, you are finally here. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have let you go south. It's all my fault." No one knew why she was crying so sadly. Su's father and mother thought that Su wanted them to come to Xiangqing, but ended up trapping them into city and feeling guilty about that. Yu thought that Su was feeling wronged and vented her extremely sad emotions in front of Su's father and mother. Just when everyone didn't know what to say to the crying Su suddenly stopped crying. She stopped crying, let go of Su's father, wiped away her tears, looked up and took a close look at her parents. They were still the same as she remembered, except that they looked a little tired. Su's father and mother were standing in front of her just fine, without any injuries or bumps. "I'm telling you, kid, you don't know how to take care of yourself. Come on, get in." When Su's mother heard what Yu said, she focused on Su's feet and hurriedly drove Su away from Su's father into the house like a chicken. Su's father smiled as he watched the two of them enter the room and waved to Yu politely. "Xiao Yi, don't be so reserved.
I don't know how to thank you this time.
Come in together." Yu shook his head, feeling a little worried. In fact, he had been worried all the way. After finding Su's parents into city, facing their inquiries, Yu did not dare to tell the truth. He only said that he was a friend of Su and Su asked him to help bring them out. In front of the girls' parents, would he dare to tell them what happened that night? No. Even though he was the one who got the girls' parents out of the city, he did not dare to tell them. So, Yu felt a little guilty when facing Su's father and mother. When Su's father told him to go into the house, Yu followed him in obediently. After entering the house, Su's father was obviously stunned for a moment, turned his head to look at Yu, and asked in surprise, "Why is Su living here? Shouldn't she live on campus?" Yu opened his mouth, but he didn't know how to answer. In fact, he and Su had only known each other for a few days, so he had no idea what the girl was thinking. After thinking about it carefully, he could only reply, "Maybe Su was bullied at school recently, so she moved out." Being bullied? Su's mother, who was holding Su's arm in front, immediately screamed and turned around, staring at Yu with a pair of eyes like a searchlight. At that moment, many associations immediately flashed through Su's father and mother's minds, such as campus violence, the whole dormitory bullying Su being treated unfairly by the teacher, and mental disorder. What's going on? I knew it. The voices of Su's father and mother rang out at the same time. Both of them couldn't help but raise their voices. Su's mother couldn't help but her eyes turned red, and she kept muttering, I knew that our Sue has been a coward since she was a child. She has been bullied since elementary school. How could she have such a personality? How could she have such a personality?
Mom.
Sue on the side couldn't help but glare at EU. Don't listen to his nonsense, he knows nothing. This is my classmate's house. She went abroad and asked me to help look after it for a few days, so I moved in. The expressions on Sue's father and mother's faces showed obvious disbelief. Sue could only smile at them, turned back and glared at EU fiercely, then pushed Sue's father and mother into the living room and tried her best to speak in a relaxed and steady tone. Everything I said is true, father, mother. This is really my classmate's house. Besides, aren't final exams coming up soon? While I'm looking after her house, I can also review my lessons here in peace and quiet. What a great thing. Please don't be paranoid, okay? Don't I know your character? Now you've been bullied by your classmates and have to move out.
No, we can't just let this go.
I'm going to your school tomorrow to talk to your class teacher. Sue's mother didn't listen to Sue's explanation at all. In the eyes of Sue's father and mother, Sue was the one who always stood in the position of the weak. She was their daughter raised, and Sue had been bullied by others since she was a child. It was still the same when she went to college. So no matter what Sue said, Sue's father and mother were certain that Sue had suffered from school bullying. The more relaxed Sue acted, the more uneasy Sue's father and mother felt. Hey, that's enough, you guys should just go wash up and go to bed. It's already so late. If you want to trouble the teacher, wait until tomorrow. It didn't make sense, and Sue didn't know how to communicate with her parents. Anyway, she had made up her mind that after tricking her parents into Xiangqing, she would never let them go back. So let her parents do whatever they wanted in Xiangqing. She only had to wait for more than 40 days, and the end of the world would come, and all problems would no longer be problems. As she said that, Sue turned around and pushed Yu, who was standing behind her like a telephone pole, and whispered, "I'll take you out. Baby shoes." Sue's mother was behind Sue, crying as she picked up a pair of boots from the ground. Sue took them and put them on quickly. She said to her mother, whose face was full of worry, "I'll go see him off. We can talk later if you have anything to say. Xiao Yi, come in and have a cup of tea before you leave." Sue, where's the tea? Father Sue was behind Mother Sue, waving at Yu. He obviously had a good impression of Yu and wanted to ask Yu to find out some news about Sue. But seeing the three Sue family members' attitude, Yu dared not stay at the scene. He lowered his head and waved his hands with a guilty conscience. "Well, uncle, maybe next time. I've given you my phone number. When Sue explains everything to you, you can call me, and I'll be there right away." "Really, I promise not to shirk my responsibility." "Stop talking. You still think I haven't said enough." Upon hearing what Yu said, Sue lowered her voice to warn him and quickly pushed Yu out the door, leaving his father and mother standing at the entrance with worried faces. Sue turned around and slammed the door shut, blocking her parents' gazes. She slapped Yu's chest muscles hard and growled in a low voice, "Don't you think you're not in enough trouble? You come up here to seek a sense of presence in front of my parents? If I don't tell you about this, don't take the initiative to be honest, okay?"
But
Yi looked down at Sue and said with embarrassment, "Sooner or later, this matter will be exposed. Then you can take as long as you want. You've done enough. I've paid you. My parents found it for me. We don't owe each other anything. Go away. My parents asked you not to come again." Sue waved to Yu and made a goodbye gesture. Seeing Yi lowering his head in dejection again, Sue ignored him. Just as she was about to turn around and go through the door, she remembered something. She turned to look at Yu and said a little embarrassedly, "Hey, I remembered something."
you still need to help me. I'm Buse.
Yi lowered his head, obviously a little angry. "Didn't we just say that we're even? Yu, are you a kid?" Sue's eyes bulged, and she said directly, "Please tell the school for me. My parents are going to make a fuss. Try to accommodate them, but don't explain everything to them as soon as possible. Anyway, I don't want them to go back to Jia City." Anyway, Sue's father and mother would have to go to the school to hold them accountable. Su hoped that the school could restrain Su's father and mother to prevent the matter from ending in a few days, and Su's father and mother still thinking about returning to Jia City. Okay, leave it to me.
Yiyu nodded.
It was not a big deal anyway, and could be solved with just a word or two. He stood tall and strong under the porch, with a bright light above his head falling on the brim of his hat, leaving his face in shadow. Yiyu raised his head and looked at Su in front of him. After thinking for a while, he said, Su, what I told you is true. I have never thought of evading responsibility. Yiyu, let me ask you something. Can you answer me honestly? You say. What happened in the city? Is this the same thing as what you said? Yiyu stared at Su for a long time before he found a railing by the porch and sat down, propped up his long legs, put his hands in his trouser pockets, and replied, It's okay to tell you about this. The confidentiality level is not high anyway. Do you know that there is a nationally famous disease control center next to the viaduct in Jinda City? Centers for Disease Control and Prevention? Su had a bad feeling in her heart. She turned around and sat next to Yiyu. It was a bit cold at night. She was only wearing a thin gray sweater, so she put her hands in the pockets of the sweater and waited quietly for Yiyu to continue. This time, we received a mission because we heard that there was a group of thugs causing trouble at the CDC. Originally, if it was our turn to take action, we would kill them all. However, when we entered the city, we found that the administrators of the city would not let us get close to the CDC. There was martial law there, and all the people around the CDC were gathered and fixed up and could not come out easily. Then my parents. The minibus your parents were on was a long way from the CDC, but they were sent to several hospitals in the city. They said they were going to do a blood test. You can find them by just looking up the hospital list. It's easy to bring them out. Listening to Yiyu's every word, Su felt more and more frightened. Something really happened in the city, and it was a serious matter. However, the news was obviously suppressed by the local administrators. The explanation they gave to the outside world was that a group of thugs were causing trouble in the CDC, and they had originally notified the special forces to suppress it. However, for some unknown reason, the special forces only went through the city and did not even get close to the CDC. Considering the fact that the end of the world will come in the future and that it will be brought about by a plague, it is not difficult for Su to guess that someone has turned into a zombie in the City Center for Disease Control, which is under martial law. The end of the world cannot be covered up. Even if the administrators of the city try to impose martial law on the entire city to prevent the news from leaking out for the sake of their future or for some other reason, it is not the case that the end of the world will not come if they control a CDC and a few streets near the CDC and cover up a few pieces of news. Humans will catch colds and fevers, and the doomsday virus has long existed in the air that humans breathe. Mutation is only a matter of time. Yu opened his big hand with 5 fingers and waved it in front of Su's eyes. She came back to her senses and turned her head to look at Yu, who was sitting next to her. He looked at her with a curious and worried expression. Su forced a smile and waved to open Yu's hand. I'm fine, I just think what you said is very weird. By the way, are you free on the evening of December 30th? Do what? Nothing. I'm going to ask you to go to the top of Mingyang Mountain to watch the stars. The top of Mingyang Mountain is high and cold. The key point is that it rains every day since December. Sometimes it is heavy rain, sometimes it is light rain. It will rain all day on December 30th. No one would be crazy enough to choose to go hiking on that day. If you had gone to the top of Mingyang Mountain as agreed and had not turned into a zombie, he would definitely survive on December 31st and would not be besieged and eaten by zombies because of shock. Su's hand unconsciously touched her belly, and she said to Xiao AI in her heart, Baby, your father doesn't look like a bad person. This time he helped us find our grandparents, so let's give him a hand. Whether he can survive depends on himself. We can only help him up to this point. You'll go with me to watch the stars? Are you trying to find a deserted place to kill me? The top of Mingyang Mountain is a good place to dump a body. Su, don't be so troublesome. Just give me a quick kill now. Yiyu is obviously skeptical. He half-seriously pulled the collar to expose his neck, then stretched his head and put his neck, with the arteries still beating under the skin, in front of Su Su. Su Su raised her hand to push him away, shrugged her shoulders, acted as if she didn't believe it, and got up and walked in. She didn't care what Yi Yu thought, as long as Yi Yu went to the top of Mingyang Mountain that day. After leaving Yi Yu behind and entering the house, Su Su looked at her parents, who were sitting upright on the sofa in the living room, clearly waiting for her to confess. Su Su was not panicked, and went straight upstairs, saying, "Mom and Dad, go to bed early. Your bedroom is the first one on the left. I'll make the quilt for you. Su Su, come here. Dad has something to tell you." Su's father's tone was very stern. He sat on the sofa and waved at Su Su's back. She sighed inwardly, withdrew her foot that was about to step onto the stairs, turned back to the living room, and sat in the seat designated by her parents. What happened next was exactly what Su Su had expected. Su's father and mother took turns questioning her. Their tone was relatively gentle, because in their experience, Su Su must have been wronged at school. They had to find out the truth, but they couldn't be in a hurry, lest Su Su couldn't bear the stimulation. Su Su was very familiar with dealing with this kind of thing. She would just keep her head down and keep silent, letting her parents guess and make associations. The more Su Su acted like this, the more worried Su's parents became. They asked for a long time but couldn't get Su Su to answer a single word, so they had to give up and angrily plan to go to school to ask the teacher tomorrow. Since childhood, whenever Su Su was bullied, his father and mother would go to school to ask the teacher for accountability, so they were quite familiar with doing this. Early the next morning, Su's father and mother, fully armed, took a taxi to the school. Su Su made the excuse that she was in a bad mood and let her parents go to the school to ask her the reason. She stayed at home to practice her supernatural powers and waited for the bosses of the gas tank delivery company to deliver the gas tanks. She locked them all in the basement. Su Su locked all the supplies she had stockpiled these days in the basement, and then drove out to continue her plan of stockpiling supplies. Because she had Su's father's private card, Su Su could spend money more freely. She first went to the farmer's market to buy some vegetable seeds and grain seeds. The quantity was not large, just a small bag of each variety would be enough. Then Su Su focused today's focus on medicine. As if wandering around out of boredom, Su Su visited several drugstores, mainly buying some daily medicines such as band-aids, gauze, bandages, disinfectant iodine, cold medicines, antibiotics, etc. She also prepared some daily necessities for treating headaches, fevers, and minor illnesses, but not in large quantities. After the end of the world, it was very common to go out to fight monsters, level up and find supplies, and get injured and bleed. Iodine bandages, and the like, were must-haves. Cold medicines and antibiotics were prepared for Su's father and mother. In fact, Su Su estimated that her parents would not need antibiotics because she found that her parents had a fever, but the two elders did not notice it themselves. But it's better to prepare it, just in case. What if the parents' fever is just a simple cold, not a precursor to the awakening of superpowers? Superpowers don't need cold medicine and antibiotics, but ordinary people do. Su Su also bought a lot of gout cream for Su's father, as well as xiaoyao pills, oryzanol, soybeans, honey, and royal jelly, which are essential for Su's mother during menopause. Then she also needed a weapon, a handy weapon. This was a bit difficult. Before the end of the world, guns, ammunition, knives, etc. were all controlled items. Yi Yu did have guns and knives, but he was a person who strictly guarded against these things. Su Su couldn't even touch them, let alone ask for them. Then I had to go to the supermarket to buy a few more sharp kitchen knives, fruit knives, etc. Good kitchen knives use good steel, and the price of good steel is not cheap. The most expensive ones cost thousands of yuan, and the cheapest ones cost only a few yuan. Su Su bought more than 10 feet long watermelon knives in one go, intending to cut the heads of zombies like cutting watermelons after the end of the world. This once again made the supermarket salesman who sold kitchen knives very happy. After writing down the delivery address, Su Su turned his attention to the building materials market. She spent several days and went to the building materials market while her parents were out and bought some construction tools, a miniature household hydroelectric generator, and some solar panels. The bosses delivered all of these during the day when her parents were not around, and then locked them in the basement for Su Su. Su Su had almost spent all the private money in her father's card, and she couldn't think of what to buy. In the following days, she stayed in the villa wholeheartedly. During the day, when her parents were out at school, she would either cultivate her spirit or tinker with her vegetable greenhouse in the yard. It is still a little difficult for Su Su to build a proper vegetable greenhouse, but she can learn it. There is so much information on the internet. As long as she is willing to learn, there is nothing she can't learn. Even if it is not built well at the beginning, it does not mean that she cannot improve. Looking at the few square meters of the yard that she had been working on for several days and finally had the outline of a greenhouse, Su Su clapped her hands happily, bent down and entered the greenhouse, and began to sow seeds in the soil. She bought a lot of seeds, but since it was her first time growing vegetables, she just randomly scattered some in the soil. She was only good at killing people and beating monsters and had never done these farm-style things. However, Sue's mother is very good at these things in the farmhouse. When the end of the world comes and Sue's mother starts to worry about survival, she will naturally help her manage these vegetables. Su Su is not worried at all, and now just treats them as the first batch of seeds to be planted for fun. But speaking of livelihood after the apocalypse, Su Su touched her belly. She couldn't always eat rice and vegetables. She still had to supplement with meat. She had to fill the huge refrigerator in the kitchen with frozen meat. Thinking of this, Su Su threw the bag of cabbage seeds in her hand on the small stool next to the greenhouse, quickly went into the kitchen to wash her hands, and looked at the watch on her wrist. It was still early. Sue's father and mother would not be back for another 2 hours. Should she go to the supermarket to buy some pork, beef, mutton, and chicken? Click the sound of a door opening was heard.
Susurré d'around.
Before she walked out of the kitchen, she heard her mother yelling angrily, "Su Su, come out." Su Su felt a little pain in her head when she heard the emotion in the voice. She walked out of the kitchen slowly in her slippers and saw her parents standing in the living room with gloomy faces. Father Su gently pushed Mother Su and whispered, "Why are you angry at Su Su for this? She doesn't want to do this. By Luo Luo, I will naturally go find her. Not only will I find her, I will also sue her." Mother Su stepped forward and poked Su Su's forehead fiercely with a finger, saying with some regret, "Such a big thing happened, and you still kept it a secret all day long. Tell me, how can you be so useless that you were bullied and drugged, but you still refuse to tell your parents the truth, huh?" As she scolded, Sue's mother couldn't help but burst into tears. She stretched out her arms and hugged Su Su's thin and frail body, crying, "My child, you've made your mother worry so much. What's the matter with you? You can't go to school anymore. What are you going to do in your life?" Sue's father, who was standing behind them, sat on the sofa with a serious look on his face. He took out a cigarette from his vest pocket, lit it, and rubbed his brows with his back bent. They had been looking for Su Su's class teacher for many days in a row, and the class teacher had always received them warmly. No matter how Sue's father and mother asked about the situation, or how they lost their temper and said harsh words, the class teacher always had a smiling face, and it was clear that he would delay as long as possible. Today, Sue's father and mother negotiated and changed the angle. They did not go to find the class teacher, but bought a bunch of snacks and ran to Su Su's dormitory to inquire about the situation. As a result, they did not know until they asked. When they asked, they were shocked. Li Anxin and Li Xiaoyu in the dormitory, under the sugar-coated bullets of Sue's father and mother, told the whole thing clearly and thoroughly. This included the incident where Bai Luoluo drugged Su Su, Bai Luoluo ran back to the dormitory to humiliate Su Su, and Su Su almost strangled Bai Luoluo to death with a mouse cable. As for why Su Su was able to escape legal sanctions now, the news spread throughout the school. He spoke a few words for Su Su, and the matter was turned from a big matter to a small one. I believe that soon, he will completely fade out of people's sight. But in the eyes of every parent, they only see the part where their child has been wronged. The mood of Sue's father and mother now can only be expressed as heartache, sadness, grievance, and resentment. How desperate must their Su Su have been to pick up the mouse cable to strangle Bai Luoluo. This kind of thing happened to Su Su, who was afraid to even step on an ant to death. It can be understood as a strong backlash after extreme humiliation. Moreover, Sue's parents thought that Su was about to strangle Bai Luoluo to death. This was just a rumor. Now, isn't Bai Luoluo lying in the hospital? According to Li Anxin and Li Xiuyu statements, she seemed to be alive and kicking and ran to visit Xie Qingyan next door every day. How strong was Su? Sue's parents knew that she would be exhausted just by carrying a plastic bag on weekdays. How could she almost strangle a living person? This was definitely Bai Luoluo's attempt to make a big deal out of it and then use it to blackmail Su. Taking this into consideration, Sue's father and mother felt that they had to take the initiative no matter what. Of course, they would not tell Su about these plans. As far as they knew, Su hid in such a secluded place alone to avoid the rumors of her classmates and to lick her wounds alone. Su's current situation was already sad enough, so Su's father and mother would not drag Su into the trouble of dealing with their affairs. Su's mother hugged Su and cried for a long time. Su couldn't help crying with her. But God knows she was simply affected by Su's mother's emotions, so it was inevitable that she felt weak. But as soon as Su started crying, her mother stopped crying. As a mother, if her children have strong personalities, then she can only worry about them. But if her children have weak personalities, then she must be strong as a mother. Su's mother was in this state of mind. She drove Su upstairs and stayed downstairs to discuss the matter with Su's father. Su's father even called his company and asked for a 2-month vacation. The two of them decided that if they didn't get justice for Su, they would stay in Xiangqing for the new year. This was of course more to Su's liking, but since her parents knew the whole story, Su's life became a little sad. Every morning when she opened her eyes, she saw the sad and miserable faces of her parents. In the next few days, only Su's father went out, saying that he was going to the school to find the teacher. They handed Su over to the school. Now that such a thing had happened, the school naturally had to give an explanation. Su's mother stayed at home to take care of Su, making delicious food for Su in various ways, as if she wanted to use all her tenderness to heal the harm Su had suffered. Then time passed like flowing water, and quietly came to December. The temperature woke up one day and suddenly dropped by more than 10 degrees. A thin layer of frost formed on the bushes. There was always a drizzle in the sky. The sun was not seen all day long. People walking on the street felt inexplicably sad, and the whole society was gradually shrouded by an unstable factor. Su lay on the bed, closed her eyes, and concentrated her spirit for a while. After finally fixing a silver light that would not run away again, she sat up from the bed, got up to wash, then put on a pair of slippers, ran to the first floor, and turned on the central air conditioning and floor heating. Su, we're going out to buy you some cotton padded jackets today. Come over and have breakfast. In the kitchen, Su heard her mother's voice and heard some tinkling noises. Su looked back and saw that her mother had already brought a bowl of soup to the table. She hurried to the table, picked up a spoon, and drank the soup while turning her head to look for Su's father. Where's Dad? Going to school again? No, your dad isn't going to school today. He's cleaning up the shed you played with in the backyard. Su's mother was still downstairs, but she stretched her neck to look at the backyard. Su's father was repairing the greenhouse built by Su. Su's mother suddenly became interested in this greenhouse and kept asking Su's father to make it more standardized so that she could grow some vegetables, which was better than buying those vegetables sprayed with pesticides from outside. It rained a little today, and the head teacher had to supervise the exam, so he naturally had no time to receive Su's father. So Su's father stayed at home and concentrated on decorating the greenhouse for Su's mother, while Su's mother planned to go out and took Su to the mall to buy her some winter clothes. Let Dad go out with us. The weather is so cold. I'll buy you some furs. Su bit the spoon and smiled at her mother ingratiatingly. Her mother glanced back at Su and snorted unhappily. Fur? Where did you get so much money? If you have money, buy it for yourself. Your father, and I don't want it. After a while, Su's mother turned her head, then came back and sat opposite Su. She touched the tabletop with her fingers, as if she had considered it carefully, and asked Su tentatively, Su, this house doesn't belong to your classmate, right? Otherwise, how could you go through so much trouble? And the rent money, did Xiaoyi give it to you? Which Xiaoyi? Su pretended to be confused even though she knew the answer. Which Xiaoyi? It's the Xiaoyi who rescued us from the city that day. He must be the man. When Su's mother said this, she had been observing Su's reaction. Seeing that Su's emotions did not seem as excited as she had imagined, Su's mother breathed a sigh of relief and continued, Your father and I are going to ask Xiaoyi to come out and have a good talk with him. What to talk about? What's there to talk about? Mom, he's been busy lately. Really? You guys have been in touch all the time? Su's mother seemed to have discovered a new world. A glimmer of light suddenly rose in her inquiring eyes. Su didn't even need to take off her shoes. She could guess with her toes that her mother, who had rich imagination, already had many ideas in her mind. For Su's father and mother, the house that Su is renting now is a luxury house that they have never lived in their lives. For Su to be able to do this, there must be someone supporting him behind the scenes. Su's father and mother are reluctant to spend the money to rent such a luxurious house. Besides, there are rumors in the school that the man who slept with Su suppressed the matter by Luo for Su and even informed the school leaders. No one who is not rich and powerful can do such a thing. In addition, Yu showed his ability in the city some time ago, and Su's friend since childhood. Where's Xiaoyi? Su's father and mother have no doubt that Yu is the man who slept with Su. From a parent's perspective, the first reaction to hearing that their daughter was bullied is of course anger and rage. But after calming down, things still have to return to reality. Su's father and mother naturally hope to get the greatest benefit for Su in this incident. Why did Su's father and mother send Su to college? Of course, it was so that Su could have a good diploma in the future and get a decent stepping stone when looking for a job. Su's father and mother have been making a fuss with the school for such a long time. Aren't they afraid that the school will affect Su's study because of this incident? Of course, Su's father and mother didn't think about what to do to Yu and Su. After all, Su's wishes were the most important. They just wanted to ask Yu out and let him talk about his ideas. Didn't they say they wouldn't evade responsibility? How could they not evade? Su fell silent, took the noodles that Su's mother brought to the table, picked up 2 chopsticks at random, and lowered his head to eat. In his ears, Su's mother was still nagging, Don't blame your parents for being realistic. Your father, and I just want you to have a better life. Your parents will grow old and won't be able to accompany you for a few more years. We will eventually go to the ground.
Who will protect you then?
Now, there is such an opportunity. Others have worked hard for decades, but you can easily reach that height with just a lift of your foot. You can surpass others' decades of hard work. Why should we miss such an opportunity? Money, work, or marriage, we must have one of the advantages, right? This is a very realistic statement, expressing the truest thoughts of Su's mother. They are ready to get the most practical compensation from Yu. Since Yu is so capable, he should either give Su a lot of money, or solve Su's future work problems so that Su has a stable job, or simply marry Su. As for the saying that power cannot be bent, poverty cannot be moved, they are ordinary people. Even if a few lives are lost in this matter, it is not necessarily that you will suffer, so why not be more practical? Moreover, in this whole incident, we must grasp the key point. Bai Luo is the one who drugged Su, and you just happened to run into this incident and became Bai Lolo's accomplice, without knowing it. Su lowered her head to eat noodles. This time, her eyes were really red. Her heart was aching, not because of her parents' reality, but because of their careful planning. Looking around the world, who else would plan a good future for her step by step? Apart from her own parents, there was no one else. No one else. If her parents had always been by her side in her previous life, why would Su be so homeless? It is true that as long as her parents are there is home, and having a home is where one feels at ease. She sniffed, and a white mist floated out of the soup bowl in front of her. Suddenly, her stomach churned. Su calmly suppressed the urge to, raised her hand and took a napkin from the table, and glanced at the watch on her wrist. Almost 20 days had passed. Xiao Ai was like a seed that had taken root in her stomach. It was normal to have the urge to. Okay, stop crying. Let's discuss this matter later. Don't worry about anything. Just stay at home. Thinking that Su was crying because what she said was not enough to make her feel better, Su's mother sighed, turned around and continued. At this time, Su's father walked in, covered in water. Su's mother looked up at him, exchanged a helpless look, and shook her head slightly, meaning that Su's mood was not right again, and don't talk about this matter in front of her. Su's father nodded and went into the room to change clothes. After coming out, the family of 4, including Xiao Ai, had dinner at the dining table. Su went to the garage to drive the car and urged his parents to go out. After seeing the car driven by Su's father and mother exchanged glances and got into the car without saying a word. The 4 of them started heading towards the largest, most prosperous, and busiest commercial district in Xiangqing. Su had no interest in accompanying Su's father and mother shopping. After dropping them off in front of a shopping mall in the commercial district, Su made an excuse that she had something to do, drove away, and went shopping on her own. Unlike Su's father and mother, who were buying clothes for the winter, although Su also bought winter clothes, she was more ruthless than them. Su went directly to the fur counter in Pacific Mall. Pacific Mall is a building in Xiangqing that specializes in selling high-end goods. Su bought 2 or 3 furs worth tens of thousands of yuan each for Su's father and mother, and also bought 2 for herself to use during the winter. More than 100,000 yuan was spent in one go, and there was less than 20,000 or 30,000 yuan left on Su's father's private card. Su Qian withdrew cash from the ATM and drove to the hospital. There is a large hospital outside their school, which is said to have a good reputation. Su came here for a routine checkup to see if she's pregnant. Su's answer was very firm, which shocked the 30-year-old female gynecologist. She looked at Su carefully again and smiled. It's rare. You're only 19 years old. You're still studying, right? How are you going to support yourself if you come down? Raise it well. If you can give birth to it, you can keep it alive. She shrugged and looked at the name tag on the chest of the female doctor opposite her. Zhuo chief physician. It was indeed this person, the kind doctor who had delivered Xiao Ai at the survivor base in Xiangqing. I didn't expect Su to meet Zhuo here. She is really an obstetrician and gynecologist. I didn't lie. At that time, Su felt that she was about to give birth, and Xie Yen ran away. She could only move to the Wild Hospital step by step. When she arrived at the Wild Hospital, she found that the conditions of the hospital were very simple. Everyone in a white coat was busy, and the hospital gave priority to rescuing people with connections. Women had to solve the problem of giving birth at home. If the child can be born, then raise it. If not, then the woman and the child will die together. Wrap them in a straw mat and casually throw them outside the barbed wire. It's just 2 lives. In the apocalypse, life is the least valuable thing. Su was lying on a wooden board separated by a curtain. Her stomach ached so much that she wanted to shoot herself. Blood was dripping from her body through the cracks in the wood. People were coming and going outside the curtain, and no one cared about her. It was Su's first time giving birth, and she had no experience at all. Just when she was anxious and scared, Zhuo came. Zhuo did not work in the Wild Hospital. She had no connections, so she could not enter the Wild Hospital. She just came here to try her luck and see if she could find some odd jobs to do. Then, when she was exchanging some supplies, she happened to hear Su moaning. In her words, no matter how loud the noises around were, Zhuo could tell that a woman was about to give birth as long as she heard the painful groans. At the same time, she got busy with her hands and feet. In a very short time, she took out a set of episiotomy instruments, disinfected them, propped up Su's legs, and delivered Xiao Ai for Su. If it weren't for Zhuo, in such a chaotic apocalypse, Su and Xiao Ai would probably have become one of the people abandoned outside the barbed wire. So Su said that although some people seem cold, heartless, materialistic, and realistic, in fact, she will always be helped by such people in her life. It's a pity that later on, when Su took some supplies and wanted to thank Shurjia, she never appeared in the wild hospital again. Returning to reality from her memories, Su saw Shurjia holding a pen and beginning to write medical instructions in her medical record book with great fanciness. She secretly decided that she would only see Shurjia for outpatient treatment in the future. He was a chief physician, and even in the harsh conditions of a wild hospital after the apocalypse, his skills in delivering a baby were top-notch. His medical skills were absolutely trustworthy. That's it. Take some Elevate home to take. It supplements trace elements, minerals, and vitamins. It's good for both adults and babies. After writing down the doctor's orders in the medical record book, Shurjia clicked on the computer and prescribed a bottle of Elevate for Su. Seeing that Su was still sitting there, he handed the registration card to Su. Okay, go pay and get the medicine. It takes 4 weeks, doctor. Can you give me more Elevate? 1 bottle is enough for a month. Then prescribe me a full 10-month supply, as well as calcium, iron, zinc, selenium, magnesium, etc. 10 bottles of each. Why do you need to take so many pills? This is really ridiculous. Elevate is enough to supplement all the nutrients you need throughout your pregnancy. You don't need anything else. That's it. I'll prescribe you another bottle. There's no more. Chief Physician Shurjia's voice suddenly became extremely stern. She has been a very principled doctor since she started practicing medicine. Not to mention that pregnant women cannot take medicine randomly. Even if they can, she will never prescribe medicine indiscriminately for pregnant women. So, it is a miracle for someone like her to reach the level of chief physician in a large hospital. For the hospital's efficiency, though Shurjia is definitely a headache, but for patients, perhaps such a doctor can sometimes save a family's life. Of course, it might be a little troublesome for Su, because the world will end in 20 days, and 2 bottles of Elevate can only last for 2 months. She will have to go to the hospital to get Elevate at that time. There will always be a shortage of people in the hospital, and correspondingly, the zombies are also more concentrated. Holding the medical record and registration card, Su walked out of Shurjia's clinic dejectedly. She had never done a prenatal checkup in her previous life, so she didn't know that the checkup had to be repeated. She also didn't know that pregnant women had to take vitamins, trace elements, and minerals. No wonder Xiao AI was thin when she was born. It turned out that she didn't get enough nutrition in the belly. For weeks, the end of the world has come. How can I do a pregnancy test? Su was a little worried, silently lowered her head to queue up to pay the money, and took the receipt to get the medicine. She was thinking about whether to kidnap Shurjia on December 30th. On the other side of Xiangqing, in a hidden military base that was not open to the outside world, the men had just finished training and were sitting in the dormitory chatting. Yi was wearing a pair of army green shorts, shirtless in the cold weather, holding a notebook in his hand. He rudely kicked open the dormitory door, patted the notebook in his hand, and shouted to the dozens of people in the dormitory, "Pay me back the money you lost playing cards. I need it urgently." A man in camouflage uniform, who looked to be in his 30s, with a full beard, stood up and whipped Yi with the whip in his hand. Yi ran up and kicked the man in the abdomen. The man flipped backwards and jumped onto the table, shouting, "Brothers, this is a great opportunity for the liberated serfs to sing. Kill Yi Ba Pai, and we won't have to pay back our money.
Go.
Beat him. Yi Ba Pai, you have come to this day. Stop him. Close the door quickly. Don't let him run away. Hold him, and pull his pants off for me. Yi Ba Pai, if you're serious, you're going to knock my front teeth out." In a passionate fight, Yi knocked down several people, jumped onto the table, held a notebook in one hand and a mop in the other, swept around the policeman below, and shouted, "Whoever dares to come over here, I will never surrender until I die. Yi Baopi, hand over the account book in your hand, and we brothers will let you go." "Bah, no way. I owe a lot of debts to you hooligans, and I'm counting on you hooligans to pay them off. If you want the account book, You'd better walk over my dead body. What account? Peach Blossom account? Someone jokingly said something, and everyone below looked at each other, then looked at Yu on the table, who was standing on one leg like a golden rooster and a white crane spreading its wings, and was obviously silent and acquiescing. Some hugged his feet, some dragged his hands. Thinking of this, everyone was full of fighting spirit, and they were about to overturn the dormitory. Beep beep. A sharp alarm sounded, interrupting the laughter and cursing of the crowd. All the troublemakers dispersed as quickly as possible, rushed to their beds, and began to put on their equipment. The alarm sounded, which proved that the mission was about to begin. What's the matter? King Kong, do you know? During the time when they were getting dressed, a man with glasses and a scholarly face asked King Kong, who was about 30 years old and had a full face of stubble. King Kong glanced back at him, shook his head, and tilted his head to look at Yu, who was standing next to him and was already dressed neatly, and asked, Yibaopi, do you know? I heard that something happened in the city again. Without waiting for Yu to answer, a fair-looking Special Forces soldier with a wisp of mustache, who looked like a fortune teller, came over and spread the gossip to everyone. I heard it from the captain about the incident in the city. Everyone laughed and cursed again. Yibaopi and Yu ignored them and carefully put the notebook in his hand under the pillow. He also put an old man's mobile phone in his hip pocket. The Special Forces soldier, who looked like a fortune teller next to him, saw it and slapped him. Yi reacted quickly and jumped away. He only heard the Special Forces soldier, who looked like a fortune teller, lower his voice and shouted, Yibaopi, are you crazy? You can't bring your cell phone with you on a mission. Get out of here, fortune teller. I have an important call waiting for me these days. Yi hooked his long arm and strangled the fortune teller's neck. He dragged the fortune teller out and threatened, when I kill someone, I will definitely turn off my phone. I will turn it on when I have nothing to do. Stop talking nonsense, or I will pay you back immediately. I didn't see anything. The voices of Yu and the fortune teller gradually faded away. King Kong and the scholar followed them from a distance. King Kong cursed in a low voice, get lost. Yibaopi has been obsessed with money these days. Scholar, do you know what happened? Hey, do you really not know, or are you pretending? That night the scholar smiled at King Kong with an ambiguous look on his face. I heard that he had provoked an innocent girl, and now he is trying to collect money for that girl. I was wondering why Yibaopi didn't come to play cards that night.
Turns out.
King Kong stopped talking and turned to look at the scholar. Both of them had mysterious and gloating expressions on their faces. Looking at Yibaopi in front of him, King Kong couldn't help but sigh. It's not easy. He's almost 25, and he's finally eating meat. Yes, it's much better than you, who are 34, and still haven't had meat. How the Hades can you not mention this? As they were talking, people had already entered the conference room one after another, found their own seats, and stopped talking. Everyone put on a serious face, as if they were good men who were determined to defend their country to the death. After a while, a few leaders came in and glanced at the 20 fully armed people. There were 3 special teams here, all of which were the best and most outstanding talents selected from the army. Some leaders looked reluctant, but still gave each person a form. Yibaopi, this matter looks quite serious. The fortune teller next to Yu frowned, stroked his mustache, and tapped the amount of pension on the paper with the tip of his pen. Yu raised his eyelids and took a look, then sneered. This pension amount was more than 3 times the normal amount. This special forces team of theirs is called the Suicide Squad by outsiders. Every time they go on a mission, their superiors will give them a form like this, which can be regarded as a suicide note. The form will clearly state how much pension the country will give them if they die gloriously. Over time, the people in the Suicide Squad could tell the difficulty of the mission just from the amount of the pension. The pension for this mission set a historical high. Yu calmly wrote down Su's name in the column for pension pair. From now on, his pension would only be given to Su. Su here still knew nothing. After picking up the medicine, she asked the consultation desk for a copy of Zhuoshizhia's duty roster. After calculating the time, she found out that Zhuoshizhia was on the morning shift on December 30th and would not be seeing patients in the afternoon. Su decided to sneak into Shuja's house on the night of December 30th, knock her out, and carry her back to the villa. After coming out of the hospital, Su received a call from her parents. They were already sitting in a Western restaurant in the commercial district, waiting for Su to come over for lunch. Su hurriedly drove over and looked into the extremely tasteful Western restaurant. Her parents were already sitting at a table by the window. They had ordered steak, pasta, and pizza, waiting for her to come over to eat. Su's family background is not particularly good. Her parents are ordinary people among the vast majority of people. Although her family background is not good compared with the bottom of society, they still have some money to enjoy life, such as going out for a Western meal occasionally and planning a family domestic tour once a year. This kind of small family atmosphere is very popular with Su's father and mother. Su was scolded by her mother for wearing too little, so she sat down next to her mother. Seeing that her mother had already cut the steak for her, she wished she could feed her a few bites herself. Su sighed in her heart. No matter how old a person is or how much she has experienced, in front of her parents, she will always be that hungry little baby who knows nothing. Su was also happy to be taken care of by her parents. She leaned lazily on the chair without any image, really waiting for her mother to feed her steak, while her eyes were fixed on the news on the TV hanging on the wall, watching the reports in it. The news that Su read was urban news. It was about a wealthy man in Xiangqing who invested a sum of money in a financial management company in Xiangqing. However, the income he should have received this month had not yet arrived in his account. The wealthy man suspected that he had been cheated and contacted the financial management company many times, but the people at the financial management company made many excuses. Finally, the wealthy man had no choice but to report it to the urban news, and a reporter came forward and took the wealthy man to negotiate with the financial management company. It is being reported in the news right now that the head of the financial management company is complaining to the reporter, saying that they actually have no other options. The head office is in the city, and now the people at the head office cannot be contacted, and the money is still in the account of the city and has not been transferred to the Xiangqing Financial Management Branch. Please forgive me for the nonsense. Although I know it is fake, this person is quite sincere in what he said. Lao Su, look, he is almost crying. While feeding Su steak, Su's mother commented on the news on the wall. Su's father had his back to the TV, reading a newspaper. When he heard what Su's mother said, he hummed nonchalantly and said something casually. The city has been in a lot of trouble recently. Look here, a young man named Wang Jun traveled thousands of miles to the city on foot because of a girl named Liang. As a result, he disappeared, and his family put a missing person notice in the newspaper. The sunlight shone through the glass onto Su's pale face. She chewed her steak while thinking about the city. It was obvious that the city was much more strictly controlled than it was a dozen days ago, and the news was blocked very thoroughly. For such a large city like Da, only some peripheral news was circulated. If she was not someone who had experience with the end of the world, it would be difficult for her to smell the stench of corpses. For a moment, Su felt a little uneasy, as if she was watching a person slowly and painfully dying in front of her. She knew that this person would die, but there was no way to save him. This was the trend of the times, and there was nothing she could do. After finishing the Western meal, Su's father and mother wanted to continue shopping. Su used the excuse of going to the bookstore to buy some books on studying hard and making progress every day, and then turned to the pawn shop and pawned all of Su's mother's gold and silver jewelry that she brought from Jie City. She took out nearly 20,000 yuan and continued to squander like a rich person. In the evening, Su and her father and mother found a restaurant and had a good dinner. Su drove her father and mother back to the Apple Villa district. Cars were coming and going along the road. Su was steering with one hand and leaning on the window with the other hand, thinking about something. Suddenly, a dazzling car light came from behind Su's Jeep. Su glanced in the rear-view mirror. Wow, behind her car there was actually a high-end RV. At this time, Su's car and the high-end RV drove to the gate of Apple Villa district. The gate opened and Su drove in first. She kept looking at the rearview mirror and saw the high-end RV behind her also entered the Apple Villa district. At a fork in the road, it went in two directions with Sue's car and finally stopped in front of a villa. Okay, this car is what she likes. From now on, I will travel around the world with Xiao AI and my parents. With an RV, my quality of life will be great. While Su was sitting in the driver's seat and thinking, Sue's father was sitting in the back seat, holding his cell phone and frowning, saying, Xiaoya's phone is turned off. What do you mean? Don't you want to be responsible for our Su? Sue's father sighed at Sue's mother and raised his hand to ask her to calm down. Sit down. Xiaoyi is not that kind of person. I think he might have something urgent to do. Don't worry, I'll try again tomorrow morning. Xiaoyi, you call me so affectionately. Sue's mother was very dissatisfied with Sue's father's attitude of favoring Yiyu. The two of them quarreled all the way back to the villa. Su left them, drove the car into the garage, went to the kitchen to get 2 empty glass bottles, and when she walked into the living room, the 2 glass bottles were already filled with clear water. She handed 2 glasses of water to Sue's father and mother, who were still arguing, and went upstairs to her room after telling them something. Back in the bedroom, Su entered the bathroom, looked at the round white bathtub, and began to try to fill it with water. Now, if she were to let the water run, filling half the bathtub would definitely not be a problem, but attacking with water might be a little troublesome. Su filled half the bathtub with cold water and added some hot water. Then she took off her clothes and got into the bathtub. She sat cross-legged, closed her eyes, and began to feel the connection between the water in the bathtub and her limbs. Now the spirit in her body was about the size of a pomegranate seed, and it looked shiny silver. She caught the silver light for a while, and seeing that there was no change in the spirit, she changed her way of playing. Su first thought about what she must make the spirit do. In addition to releasing the water, she also wanted to make the power it carried become a substance that could be manipulated at will. Then a layer of flowing water gradually appeared on her skin. Su felt a little anxious, but it had come to this point, and retreating was not an option. She closed her eyes and plunged her head into the water. She saw a flash of silver light on the swaying water surface, and a transparent water mirror flew out of the water and floated on the bathtub. She spit out a bubble and lay straight at the bottom of the bathtub, staring with her eyes wide open. She felt that her limbs were madly absorbing the water around her. The water rushed into her bones and blood, and rushed into her soul like a moth to a flame. The silver light on the spirit flickered like the stars in the sky, running rapidly. It was absorbing the energy of the water and releasing energy at the same time. This energy was used to support the water mirror suspended above the bathtub. Su was lying at the bottom of the bathtub, watching the water around her almost drying up. Her heart trembled, and she raised her hand suddenly, waving the faucet above her head. With a splash, the water in the shower poured down, and the water fell on Su's body, just like falling into a sponge, and disappeared without a trace. The water mirror continued to float for a long time. After a long time, Su finally adapted to this kind of energy input and output. She slowly regained control of her spirit, so that her body no longer absorbed water like a sponge. She also manipulated the energy released by her spirit to continue supporting the water mirror, allowing the water mirror to move east and west according to her will, slowly becoming thicker and thinner, and finally turning into a stream of water and falling into the bathtub. After mastering this move, it was much easier for Su to condense a water mirror than the first time. In fact, she had only used an ice mirror before. The ice mirror could protect herself, and was also a good skill to fight monsters. The principle of condensing a water mirror was similar to that of an ice mirror, but now Su felt that this water mirror tested her more refined operation than the ice mirror, because water could easily deform. If she wanted to control the water mirror in the same way as the ice mirror, it would definitely not work. She had to be more focused and use more energy to maintain the shape of the water mirror. After concentrating the water mirror 2 or 3 times, each time lasting no more than half a minute, Su was already very tired. She was a pregnant woman and still in the dangerous period of the first 3 months, so she had to take it easy. Her empty stomach made her a little anxious, so Su went downstairs and saw that it was already 2 or 3 in the middle of the night. Her father and mother had already gone to bed, so Su started to cook a large bowl of noodles, looked at the round moon outside the window, and ate it all up. There is a phone book on the table. It is the phone book that Su's father carries with him all year round. Older people always have the habit of recording phone numbers in a small notebook. Su flipped through the book out of boredom and saw Yu's name and phone number on the last page of Su's father's phone book. She stood up, feeling a little unsatisfied, and turned on the stove to start cooking the second bowl of noodles. While cooking, she took out her cell phone, thinking about the quarrel between her parents just now, and she didn't know whether they had finished talking or not, and muttered to herself, "Is your phone turned off? Let me try." Just as the fortune teller said, their mission this time was still to the disease control center in the city. This time, several blocks around the CDC have been surrounded by barbed wire. Yu and 20 others were thrown into the barbed wire. The order given to them was to kill everyone without mercy. Killing without mercy is a normal task for the death squad, but the location is an ordinary city in China, which makes Yu and others suspicious. It was not the suicide squad's right to question. They could only walk forward step by step under the moonlight, looking at the street shops that had been destroyed. "Wait a minute, someone's here," King Kong shouted in the communicator, and the members of the suicide squad who were advancing step by step stopped. In the moonlight, they saw several people staggering in front of them. Everyone put on night vision goggles. "Are you injured?" The person walking in front ignored him, dragging a seemingly weak leg, making a series of labored sounds. A teammate next to Yu turned around and said, "From the looks of it, he looks like an ordinary citizen. I don't think he has any weapons on him." "Kill?" King Kong turned his head and looked at Yu.
Yu shook his head.
How could he know what to do in this situation? The order from above was to kill without mercy, but it did not say whether an ordinary wounded person with no resistance was also within the scope of killing without mercy. "Can I ask for your instructions?" King Kong asked again. Yu nodded, and King Kong adjusted the communicator in his ear. Before he started talking, the surrounding streets and alleys were crowded with wounded people staggering in. The suicide squad members were stunned for a moment, turned their heads and looked at each other, only to hear Yu ask strangely, "Why does it feel like we are in a doomsday movie?" "They are not human, they are zombies." Before he finished his words, a wounded zombie who walked to the front pounced on the suicide squad member closest to it. As the suicide squad member screamed, Yu reacted quickly, raising the gun in his hand and fired a series of bang bang bang. King Kong, the scholar, and the fortune teller reacted one after another, and immediately stood back to back and fired at the zombies that were surrounding them from all directions. Then Yu retreated while firing his gun, and moved closer to them. The 4 of them formed a defensive camp. "Fight your way east and get into the building." Pointing to the side with the least zombies, Yu fired wildly towards the east, but those zombies were not afraid of bullets at all. Apart from hindering their movements, they didn't feel anything at all and continued to move forward. Soon, Yu's front was blocked by zombies. He raised his foot and kicked down a zombie that was rushing towards him, waving the gun in his hand to clear the way. Then Yu discovered that using brute force against these zombies was sometimes more effective than shooting, because after a kick, the zombies fell to the ground and got up slower than they could walk, as if their bodies were extremely stiff and their bones and joints were very inflexible. Soon, with the help of his teammates, Yu opened a path, kicked open the door of a nearby building, and covered his teammates behind him as they entered the room one by one. Then they quickly closed the door and found some heavy objects to prop it up. They allowed more and more zombies outside to gather. The suicide squad members sat in the building and fell into deathly silence. The night continued. King Kong squatted on the ground, constantly calling out for instructions, but no one answered him. After calling N times in a row, King Kong raised his head, with a rare look of panic in his eyes. He looked at Yu, forced a smile uglier than crying, and cursed. "Such a high pension, it's really a life to earn but no life to spend it." It might be that the people above them were afraid of the spread of infection or something. Anyway, given the situation, even the command had cut off contact with them. It was obvious that the situation was much more complicated than expected. Yiyu's face was livid, and everyone's face looked bad. Under the moonlight, they felt heavy and frightened. Suddenly, the Suicide Squad member who had been bitten by a zombie before was lying on the ground, and his whole body twitched suddenly. The teammates closest to him immediately stepped forward, some pressing his hands and some pressing his feet. Yiyu raised his gun, looked at his comrade, and felt grief-stricken. Everyone realized a serious possibility. Where did those zombies and monsters outside come from? Why couldn't a city control the situation in just a few days and had to sacrifice them to make up for it? The barbed wire fence was so high and had electricity. Don't think that they were airdropped in, so you can't see the fence being built outside the barbed wire fence. All these things told them that there was indeed a possibility of infection here, and their comrade who was bitten by a zombie was likely to have been infected. Some people couldn't help it, holding their guns, lowering their heads, and wiping their eyes. Iron-blooded men, good men who never blinked even when faced with a hail of bullets, now facing their brothers who used to eat, sleep, and go through life and death together. How should they choose? They knew that they should probably shoot him, but no one wanted to be the one to shoot him. Glancing at the brothers who were obviously retreating, Yu stepped forward and saw that the brother who was twitching and struggling on the ground had calmed down. He stopped and pressed his finger on the man's neck artery and said coldly, "His pulse is still beating. Tie him up first.
Then,
We have to find a way to get out and find something to eat. We can't starve to death in here." The mission they came in for was just 3 words: kill without mercy. Yiyu didn't understand it before, but now he understands. It means to kill without mercy, to kill the zombies until the last one dies. This is to use the smallest sacrifice to exchange for the greatest benefit. Just as they had always guessed, some people in the city did not want the situation to get out of control, so they tried to conceal everything that happened in the city. Will we be infected too? King Kong was still squatting on the ground, holding his head with his hands, a hint of despair in his eyes, but he still didn't want to give up the hope in his heart, so despair and hope were intertwined. He thought of the zombies outside and the doomsday-like situation inside. They knew nothing about it and didn't even know how to prevent themselves from being infected. "I don't know, we know nothing." Yi shook his head with a frozen face. What happened in the CDC? Why did they tell them before that the situation was under control and then let the situation develop like this? All those messed up things made it impossible for these small-time soldiers to analyze anything. Now the only thing they can do is to kill, kill, kill. If they don't kill the zombies, they will die. If they kill all the zombies, they will die too. You are my little apple, and I can never love you enough in such a depressing atmosphere. An unusually loud song, Little Apple, rang out. The music echoed in the dark night, attracting the zombies who were still wandering aimlessly in the distance to run here, shouting. Inside the building, everyone was stunned for a few seconds. When did it turn on automatically? "This is an old phone, not a smart one," Yiyu explained somewhat awkwardly, turned around, and took out the black old man's phone from his back pocket. This was the new one he bought. Maybe he hit some keys when fighting the zombies just now, so the phone turned on automatically, and the name on the caller ID was Sue. At this moment, Yiyu felt a little sad. He was about to die, so why was Sue calling? He didn't want to answer the call at first, but Little Apple was still playing, and the sound was so loud that it was scary. He also thought that he should at least tell Sue where to collect his pension, so he answered Sue's call. "Hello?" On the other end, Sue didn't even need to press the speakerphone button because it was an old phone, so her voice could be clearly heard by everyone present. "Yiyu, where are you?" "Doing a mission in this city." "You can bring your phone with you on a mission?" "You're kidding me." Without me." "Wait a minute. What's that noise over there? Are there zombies over there?" Because it was also at night, and maybe because the receiver of Yiyu's old-fashioned phone was very good, Sue suddenly heard a very familiar voice, which really made her miss it. Her hands and feet suddenly felt itchy, the kind of itch that made her want to rush to the other end of the phone to beat the zombies. Yiyu didn't say anything and seemed unusually silent. He was thinking about how to tell Su that they might be sacrificed. How much of the complex factors involved could Su understand? You're in a city, still killing zombies? Haha, there are zombies to kill? Why aren't you talking? I know you're going to die. Seeing Yiyu silent, Su continued to speak. To be honest, she realized that Yiyu and the others had zombies to kill. There was indeed a hint of joy in her tone. She did not hide her cheerful mood, and slapped her thigh and laughed. It was great that there were such a lucky group of people in the world who could be the first people in the apocalypse who could kill zombies. Envy, jealousy, and hatred. Over there, besides the sounds of the zombies, there was also the sound of Yiyu's breathing. After a while, Yiyu replied gloomily, Su, are you happy that I'm dead? Well, I won't be very happy, but I won't be sad either. Whether you live or die has nothing to do with me. Forget it. You are the only woman I have ever had in my life. When saying this, Yiyu's voice became deeper and his eyes became a little misty. He seemed to be savoring the taste of Su that he had tried before, and then he said, I can't give you the retirement settlement money I promised you, but I'm on a mission this time, so the pension is tripled. I filled in your name as the recipient of the pension, and they will contact you. If they don't contact you, remember to go and get it yourself. Just find Director Liu Jinghua of the Xiangqing Armed Forces Department. He's my childhood friend, and he will help you. On the other end of the phone, Su sat at the dining table, holding the phone in one hand and twirling 2 chopsticks in the other, poking the bottom of the bowl in front of her. The smile on her face faded little by little as Yiyu spoke, and she became serious and solemn. Then, as if suddenly, she spoke, interrupting Yiyu's chatter. Yiyu, the most critical part of a zombie is the head. You either hit its head or beat it to pieces, otherwise they will keep chasing you. Ordinary zombies like this are less active during the day than at night. As long as you are not bitten by the zombies, the doomsday virus will not cause direct infection to you. Even if you are bitten, it doesn't matter. Observe for 24 hours. If you don't turn into a zombie within 24 hours, okay, congratulations on evolving into a mutant. In fact, they are easy to kill. You don't need to be afraid of them because even at night when they are very active, their movement speed is as slow as a turtle. You are Special Forces soldiers. Is it difficult to kill a turtle? The key is to overcome the fear from your heart. Su suddenly became serious, and her words changed from gloating because Yiyu actually wanted to give her his pension. The end of the world has come. What else does she need so much money for? But just such a small action by Yiyu made Su suddenly feel a little compassion in her heart. After all, Yiyu is Xiao Ai's biological father, and he didn't do anything bad to her. He just accidentally slept with her. Saving his life is better than building a 7-story pagoda. At that moment, Su felt that her heart suddenly became noble. She was an angel who saved Yiyu's group of poor people. Otherwise, how could she explain that she suddenly got interested in trying to get through Yiyu's phone at such a late hour? Otherwise, she would have to listen to her parents quarreling about this matter again the next day. That's all. You can figure out the rest in actual combat. After forcibly hanging up Yiyu's phone, Su stood up, pulled her pajamas closer, took out a large caterpillar bread from the refrigerator, sat at the dining table and tore it open bit by bit. While thinking about the problem, she stuffed the breadcrumbs into her mouth. The end of the world is coming, the end of the world is coming, and it is approaching humans little by little at its pace. Su is a little excited. She eats the caterpillar bread and thinks about the little AI in her belly. At this moment, she has only one thought in her mind. The person who has been worried about it for a long time must be dealt with. On the other end of the phone, you listen to the busy tone coming from the old phone, with 2 confused expressions on his face. He turned his head to look at his comrades behind him, just as he was about to mechanically repeat Su's words so as to discuss the feasibility of the information in these words with his comrades behind him nodded one after another. There is no other way now. Let's try what Su said. These zombies are not afraid of bullets at all, and we have limited ammunition. If we don't kill them all, we will die too. Just do as your Su said. Did you all hear it? Yiyu covered the old-fashioned phone in his hand with a vigilant look on his face. His teammates nodded, with shameless and self-righteous expressions on their faces. The volume of the old-fashioned phone was so loud that even if they didn't want to listen, they could hear it clearly. Since their hearing was so damaged, they might as well listen openly and remember it. FCK, you guys are a bunch of beasts. Unable to hold back, Yu denounced this group of shameless eavesdroppers and almost forgot about the zombies gathering outside the door. It was not until the heavy object blocking the door was squeezed loose by the zombies outside that Yu raised a trembling finger and pointed at King Kong and others in anger. I'll settle the score with you later. That night, the 20 members of the Suicide Squad in the city experienced the most absurd night of their lives. That night, Su from Xiangqing sat in the kitchen and also did not sleep all night. The next morning, when it was almost light, Su's father and mother got up, made breakfast, and went to the school to cause trouble for the teacher. After going to school for a few days in a row, Su decided to go to the school as well, so she went back to school with her parents and she returned to the dormitory. It was class time, and there was no one in the entire women's dormitory area. When Su entered the dormitory, Lianxin and Li Xiuyu were not there, so she sat at the table, turned on the computer, and started surfing the internet. On the internet, Su seemed to be browsing the news casually, without any purpose. In fact, the news she read was all related to the city. Naturally, there were no disaster reports in the city on the internet and in the mainstream media. There were only people's livelihood news such as missing person notices or a company or institution in the city being frozen. Based on Yiyu's description, Su could analyze that the disaster in the city did not seem to be a whole city disaster, but a certain area of the city was blocked. According to Yiyu, only a few blocks around the CDC were blocked, and they were killing zombies near the CDC. How naive. Using high walls and barbed wire can prevent the spread of infection. Su laughed in her heart and randomly opened a Minesweeper game on the computer to play. After playing for about half an hour, Lianxin and Li Xiaoyu came back. Lianxin opened the door, but she was startled when she saw Su sitting inside playing on the computer and hid behind Li Xiuyu. Li Xiuyu was brave enough and was stunned for a moment, raised her hand to adjust her glasses on the bridge of her nose, smiled at Su, and said, Su, you're back? Su lazily leaned back in the chair and yawned. She didn't sleep all night last night, and she had some pregnancy reactions, so her mental state was a little bad. She tilted her head and looked at Li Xiuyu with squinted eyes. How is Bai Luoluo? Xiuyu, I'll go get some food. Without waiting for Li Xiuyu to answer, Lianxin walked into the dormitory, got her meal card and lunchbox, and helped Li Xiuyu get her lunchbox as well. I'll get some for you. Come down and eat right away. Okay. Li Xiaoyu nodded, watching Lianxin's back walk away, and explained to Su embarrassedly, she may not have come to her senses yet. Not only had she not come to her senses yet, looking at Lianxin's attitude, it was obvious that she had some opinion about Su. After all, they had lived in the same dormitory for so long. Lianxin just glanced at Su when he opened the door, and then entered the dormitory, took the meal card, and took the lunchbox, all while treating Su as if she was invisible and non-existent. Lianxin is expressing her dissatisfaction with Su with this attitude. She is excluding Su. Childish. Su spat at Lianxin in her heart, ignored him, continued to look at Li Xiuyu, and asked again, how is Bai Luoluo? She's still in the hospital. Li Xiuyu approached Su, pulled a chair, and sat down next to her, resting her hands on the back of the chair, and sighed. Actually, Bai Luoluo has almost recovered, but for some reason, she keeps having a fever, and it keeps getting worse for days on end. No reason can be found, so she has been staying in the hospital, her parents said. Li Xiuyu looked up at Su and saw that Su was listening attentively. She continued, say this is the sequelae caused by you. Bai Luoluo also has a fever. Su was lost in thought, mumbling to herself. Looking at her expression, it was unclear what she was thinking about. Li Xiuyu stood up and poured herself a glass of water, took 2 sips, and continued, I think this matter is quite troublesome. Su, are you still coming to study? Not coming anymore. I think so. They all said that you are doing pretty well now. That person seems to have a good relationship with the school. Even the teachers are helping your parents and educating and criticizing by Lolo's parents, asking them not to cause trouble. That person is naturally Yiyu. Now the story of Su getting together with Yiyu by chance has spread all over the school. According to Li Xiaoyu, Bai Lolua's parents and Su's parents seem to have started a tug-of-war in the school. Bai Lolua's parents thought they were rich and vowed to make Su pay the price, while the school sided with Su's parents because of Yiyu's background. So Bai Lolua's parents not only did not gain any advantage, but also suffered a lot of anger for it. Su was secretly proud of her godly arrangement. She had expected that Bai Lolua's family would not give up, so she informed Yiyu in advance. Now, Bai Lolua's family must be mad with anger. She looked down at her watch calmly. The time was December 25th. Su sneered inaudibly and turned her head to look at Li Xiaoyu. I want to go see Bai Luoluo. Can you give me the hospital and bed number where she is staying? Good. Thinking that Su was going to reconcile with Bai Luoluo, Li Xiaoyu immediately put down the water cup and wrote down the hospital, department, and bed number where Bai Luoluo was staying on the sticky note. Su took it and looked at it. Wow, what a coincidence, it was the big hospital where Zhuo Shijiao worked. She nodded, put the sticky note in her backpack, raised her hand, and started to disassemble her computer. While disassembling, she said to Li Xiaoyu, "Thank you. Today is Christmas. I wish you a Merry Christmas. Also, I heard that there will be heavy rain and sleet in the next few days. Don't go out unless necessary. With your courage and insight, as long as you don't show sympathy indiscriminately, you can live forever." What's the meaning? Li Xiaoyu's face turned pale, and she looked at Su in confusion. She thought Su was mocking her, but they had a good chat just now. What does not showing sympathy indiscriminately can live forever mean? Putting this in other people's ears, it is very ambiguous. Su did not explain, but smiled meaningfully at Li Xiaoyu, picked up her computer, and left the dormitory. As soon as she walked out of the dormitory door, she saw Li Anxin standing by the door. When she saw Su coming out, she walked into the dormitory expressionlessly. When she brushed past Su's shoulder, she still didn't look at Su. After a while, Su heard behind her. Li Anxin deliberately said loudly to Li Xiaoyu, "You're still talking to her? Look, she's mocking you for being so kind." And Xian, stop talking. In the dormitory, Li Xiaoyu looked back at Su. The thin figure stood straight as she turned and walked away. For a moment, Li Xiaoyu felt a little sad from somewhere in her heart. She couldn't tell what kind of feelings Su gave her, but deep down, Li Xiaoyu felt that what Su had just said seemed to have no malice. Su, carrying a host, a monitor, a mouse, and a keyboard, walked easily to the parking lot outside the dormitory. From a distance, he saw Su's father and mother arguing with two people. When she saw Su coming, Su's mother, who was still arguing with others with a red face, immediately turned around and took the LCD monitor from Su's hand. Su's father did the same, just half a beat behind Su's mother, and took the host from Su's hand. "Shushu, you came just in time." The two people who had been arguing with Su's parents before, one of them was a woman in her 40s, dressed elegantly in a purple long down jacket, carrying an alligator leather bag, with makeup on her face and her hair permed to look fashionable. She walked up in high heels, looked at Su and sneered, "You are quite good, little girl, but you are too ruthless. You beat our Luo like this. Do you want to just let it go? Allow? Of course not. We have sufficient evidence. We must bring you, by Luo, to court. You framed your classmates and drugged them out of jealousy. Who did you learn this despicable trick from?" There was no need for Su to speak. Her mother threw the LCD monitor in her hand to her father, rolled up her sleeves, and started to confront the lady. Su stood behind her father and mother, slowly took out the car keys, opened the door, and sat in the driver's seat. Judging from the current situation, it was not difficult for Su to guess that her parents must have had a conflict with Bai Loluo's parents at the head teacher's place again. When it was time to leave, Lola's parents chased after her parents and started to make trouble. Ordinary people like her parents naturally would not give in, and the two sides started arguing while standing in the parking lot. Despicable? No matter how despicable we are not as good as you. With the help of Luo Luo, you even got close to a powerful person. Not bad, but you should not be too proud. We are also people with status in the society. You, Su Su, are just a witch. Following the lady's arrogant words, Su Su had already backed her military jeep out of the parking space and parked it behind her parents. She turned her delicate and slightly pale face from the front and looked at the lady and the middle-aged man in a suit who had been standing behind her and had not said much. Suddenly she laughed and said to the lady, "Don't worry, no matter how cheap I am, I can never be even 1/10,000th as cheap as Bai Luo Luo." Who is Bai Luo Luo? She is a lazy and extravagant daughter of a wealthy family. In the end, she couldn't stand the suffering of doomsday, so she started to engage in the flesh trade. Su Su feels that compared with her, she is extremely pure and noble. The little girl is sharp-tongued. This kind of character will put her at a disadvantage in society. The middle-aged man in a suit standing behind the lady finally spoke, but the warning and threat in his words were obvious. Su Su raised her eyebrows with a provocative look in her eyes. She looked at the middle-aged man with an attitude of "come on if you dare." She stretched out a hand, patted the car door, and shouted to Su's father and mother, "Mom and Dad, get in the car. Why are you arguing with two mad dogs? Aren't you afraid of lowering your own standards? Who are you calling a mad dog?" The lady was almost mad with rage. She rushed forward and was about to fight with Su Su, but the middle-aged man behind her grabbed her arm. There was a look of obvious pride on the faces of Su's father and mother. It was great. It was rare for their Su Su to be so strong. It really made them, as parents, feel proud. After Su's father and mother got into the car, Su Su stepped on the accelerator and did a beautiful drift, splashing mud on the ground. With a paw sound, the mud splashed onto the faces and bodies of the middle-aged man in a suit and the lady. At the back of the car, even the middle-aged man in a suit who had been trying hard to control himself couldn't help but roared in anger. Inside the car, Su's mother looked back and saw this scene and couldn't help laughing. Su Su was quite calm. She didn't think her behavior was anything to be happy about, nor did she feel unhappy. This kind of provocation could only make her parent happy, just like playing with children. If she really took action, it would be either death or injury. The car drove on the road and drove for a distance when Su Su's phone rang. She held the steering wheel with one hand and took out the phone with the other. She could hear Su's father muttering in the back seat, "Don't answer the phone while driving. Where did you learn these bad habits?" Your father, have been driving for so many years, and I've never been as careless and nonchalant as you are." Nagging. The nagging of parents is actually the most sincere concern in this world. But Su Su still did her own thing. She turned on the phone with one hand and answered it. Yi Yu's voice came from it. His voice was no longer as dull and nervous as it was a few days ago. It seemed that he had adapted to the small apocalyptic environment in the city. "What are you doing? If you have something to say, say it." "I'm driving." Su Su's eyes were fixed on the front, and his tone was as bad as usual. You didn't mind. He could hear gunshots from his side, the passionate roars of men, and the sounds of zombies one after another. It was very lively, making Su Su a little restless. "One of our teammates has been bitten by a zombie for many days and has been in a coma. Didn't I tell you? If bitten by a zombie, an ordinary person will turn into a zombie within 24 hours. If it hasn't turned into a zombie within 24 hours, it means that he has good resistance and his body is evolving into a superpower. If a superpower is bitten by a zombie, it depends on the energy in his body. If the energy is strong, the doomsday virus will attack slowly. Over time, the doomsday virus in the body will be purified by itself. If the energy is weak, it will not be able to defeat the doomsday virus and will turn into a zombie. But don't shoot yourself as soon as you are scratched by a zombie. That death is too unfair. Also, there are crystal cores in the brains of zombies. That thing is very important for upgrading superpowers. Remember to take it out after killing them. Although Su felt very impatient, in order to prevent Yu, a small-time soldier, from not understanding, she still explained in detail the measures to be taken after being bitten by a zombie. Stopping the bleeding was the most important thing, and the rest was just leaving it to fate. After saying these things, Su did not avoid her parents. She was driving and her parents were in her car, so there was no way to avoid them. Besides, Su also wanted to let her parents know about these things subtly, so that when the doomsday comes in a few days, if they encounter someone bitten by a zombie, they will not know how to deal with it. Really? I said it's okay, haha, I'm just a little unsure and I'm really nervous. How did you know all this? Yi smiled flatteringly on the other end of the phone, seeming to be making small talk. Su couldn't help but feel a shudder in her stomach, and she forced herself to cough and replied, I saw it in a movie. Oh, actually I also like watching this kind of apocalyptic movies. We have similar interests. It's getting cold. Be careful not to catch a cold. I don't know if it's because Yu has been in the military camp for too long and has become out of touch with society, or if he has always had a simple mind, but he actually believed what Su said. In such a tense environment, he even started discussing his interests and hobbies with Su. Su couldn't help but take a deep breath, hold back the churning in her stomach, and hung up Yu's phone. But she heard Su's mother sighing from the passenger seat. Su, your father and I are planning to go back to Jia City tomorrow. Why are you going back to Jia City? Your father said that he had some money deposited in Jia City. He wanted to take out the money and buy you a house in Xiangqing. Oh, wait a few days. Yu called just now and said he's on a business trip for a few days and will be back on the 31st. Then I'll go back to Jia City with you guys.
Shushulit without blinking.
The money that Su's father had left in Jia City? She had already spent it all. If she let her parents go back to Jia City to get the money, wouldn't she be expecting to be beaten? Su's mother, who was sitting in the passenger seat, counted the time on her fingers. It was only 5 or 6 days. She looked back at Su's father in the back seat. Su's father nodded quickly and leaned forward on the back of Su's seat, asking about her in both open and covert ways. Daughter, the person who just called you to discuss the plot of the movie was Xiaoyi, right? He thought that Su and Yi were discussing the plot of the movie just now and would never think about the real situation. Su said and Su's father and Su's mother exchanged a look. See, the two have already discussed a certain plot of the movie. It seems that this interaction is still good. Then when they negotiate with Yu, should they change their thinking? Su raised her eyes and happened to see Su's father's meaningful eyes in the rear-view mirror. She didn't say it directly. There were only the last few days left. She had to let her parents find something to do to pass these boring years. But in the next few days, Su's father and mother were no longer bored, but Su, as expected, fell into a very uncomfortable situation. When she was pregnant with Xiao AI in her previous life, she actually lay in bed crying every day. Later, the end of the world came, and she and Xie Qingyan had to run and escape every day. She didn't have the leisure to experience the various reactions of early pregnancy. But now, she felt that she wanted to sleep all day long, and was very sleepy. Sometimes, after just waking up and eating a meal, she would immediately feel tired and want to sleep. Occasionally, she would force herself to wake up and practice her supernatural powers, but she would from time to interrupt the practice of her supernatural powers. Su was so angry that she poked her belly with her finger and scolded, "Little AI, look at the time now. You are still tormenting your mother. The zombies are about to have a party, and your mother is still sleeping here." After the training, Su yawned and fell back to bed to continue sleeping. After getting up, Su vomited again and beat her chest and stamped her feet. If Xiao AI hadn't messed with her speed of practicing thousands of miles a day, she would have already surpassed the heavens. The day finally arrived on December 30th. Su was awakened by the alarm clock on the bedside. With a pair of hazy eyes, she went into the bathroom to brush her teeth and wash her face. She tied her long hair into a neat bun again, changed into a light and comfortable yoga suit, put on a long down jacket on the outside, and walked downstairs slowly in slippers. In the living room, Father Sue was reading a newspaper while watching TV. Mother Sue was busy in the kitchen. When she saw Sue coming down, Mother Sue was holding a soup spoon in her hand and asked in surprise, "Why are you getting up so early today? Aren't you going to sleep in?" "Well, I'm going to school today, and I'm going to check out some books from the library." "Okay, your dad and I will go out together in your car later." "Don't go out today. Didn't you both have a fever yesterday?"
Stay home and rest for a day.
"I'll bring you some medicine when I get back from school." These days, Sue didn't know what his father and mother were discussing. It might be that the stalemate with Bailoloa's parents had reached its most intense point. They had to go to school every day, leaving early and returning late, just like going to work. Moreover, Bailoluo was actually staying in the hospital. It was heard that she had a fever again. Recently, the hospital was overcrowded with people who had a fever for a long time, or whose fever came back again after it went down. Tomorrow is the end of the world. Sue has to leave her parents at home today, and she has to go out. She is going to the hospital to kill people. She is afraid that when the end of the world comes, the survivors will run around, and then Bailoluo and Xiaqingyan will be separated, and she won't be able to find them. Sue had already obtained the hospital, department, and bed number where Bailoluo was staying from Li Xiuyu. Xiaqingyan had also sent Sue many messages during this period. Although Sue had not replied to any of them, she probably knew that he had been discharged from the hospital and returned to school. So according to Sue's plan, she would first go to the hospital to kill Bailoluo, then drive to the school, ask Xiaqingyan out, and then kill Xiaqingyan. Anyway, it was the last day, and the police could arrest her or not. In the end times, there were so many people who killed and were killed. Weren't there enough? Sue's mother was still thinking about whether it was okay to let Sue go out alone. She and Sue's father did have a fever these days, but apart from the fever, they didn't feel any discomfort anywhere else. Just as Sue's mother was thinking hard, Sue's father walked into the kitchen with a newspaper, sat down at the dining table, shook his head and sighed. What on earth is wrong with this world? Another hospital is overcrowded, and an extremely serious doctor-patient conflict has broken out. In just a few days, it seems that news about tensions between doctors and patients is everywhere. Either this hospital was smashed, or that hospital injured or killed several doctors and nurses. I think it may be because the weather has become very cold recently, and more people have caught colds and fevers. The doctors and nurses are too busy to handle it, so the conflicts have become much greater. Oh, this society is too chaotic. Sue, don't go to the hospital later. Your dad and I just have a minor cold, and it will go away. There are so many people in the hospital. What if you happen to run into a few troublemakers and accidentally get hurt? Sue lowered her head and ate noodles, listening to her father's lament about the current situation. She nodded to her mother's words and found a job for her father. Dad, I saw on the news that there might be heavy rain, sleet, or something like that tomorrow. Can you check the electrical wiring of this house? I found a few miniature hydroelectric generators for home use in the basement last time. I thought they were just sitting there anyway, so why not waste them? Dad, you have good skills. Can you connect them to the villa? That way, we can just use them for lighting and it won't cost us any money. When it comes to saving money, Sue's father and mother are naturally more enthusiastic than Sue. Sue's father immediately nodded in agreement, saying that he would not go out today and would definitely get this thing done. At this point, Sue felt relieved. She put down her chopsticks, ran to the basement, and moved the miniature hydroelectric generators up. It was not that she didn't want Sue's father to find out about the basement full of supplies, so she didn't take Sue's father downstairs. It was just that the things in the basement were too messy and there were too many of them, so Sue's father couldn't find where the miniature hydroelectric generators were even if he came downstairs. These days, Sue's father and mother were always out during the day. When the delivery men came to their door, Sue asked them to leave the goods in the yard and then moved them to the basement herself. After Sue's father and mother came back, she didn't tell them what she had hoarded, so as to avoid them thinking that she was crazy and buying things indiscriminately. Today, Sue thought that tomorrow would be the end of the world anyway, so she could do whatever needed to be fixed up. It didn't matter if her godparents found out about the basement full of things, because sooner or later they would understand how wise her decision was. After moving the hydroelectric generator, Su reminded her mother not to go out today. She went to the garage, drove the car, and drove to the hospital where Zhuoshijia was. Today, Zhuoshijia was on the morning shift. Su originally wanted to make an appointment and visit Zhuoshijia's outpatient clinic. As soon as she entered the hospital's outpatient building, she saw the scene. Wow, it was full of blackheads. There were long queues in front of the hospital's 12 registration windows. Each long queue extended to the outside of the gate. Even in front of a row of self-service registration machines, there were countless people standing. It has been drizzling for the past few days. The weather was already bad, and no one would be in a good mood when encountering this kind of rainy season that never stops. Those who did not enter the hall could only stand in the cold wind and rain waiting. In addition, Su was already having a fever and a cold. When she parked the car and walked over, she saw several people fainted on the ground. I don't know whether I will be a human or a ghost when I stand up again. Su gave up the idea of registering and went to the internal medicine department on the 5th floor. According to the information given by Li Xiaoyu, Bai Luoluo was in bed 18 of the internal medicine department. She had a good idea. She put a fruit knife in the pocket of her down jacket. As soon as she arrived at Bai Luoluo's bed, she immediately cut Bai Luoluo's neck. It was quick and efficient and did not waste any time. As soon as the elevator door of the internal medicine department on the 5th floor opened, Su was dumbfounded. There were people everywhere. All of them were listless patients with fever. Some were sitting on the ground with 4 drips, some had barely a bed in the corridor, and some could only stand. It looks like this place is about to become a zombie club. Every patient with a fever has dark circles under their eyes and the skin on their faces is a little blue. They all look half dead, and their eyes seem dull, as if they are wavering between consciousness and unconsciousness. Even the nurses and doctors on duty were a little slow to react. When they saw Su coming out of the elevator, they all turned their heads to look over blankly. She was clearly still a living person, breathing, but when she was doing these movements, the whole floor was eerily silent. This is a place where the doomsday virus is extremely active. Su reached her hand into the pocket of her down jacket and tightly grasped the small fruit knife. She put her other hand outside the down jacket and squeezed and loosened it. In the process of switching gestures, a small water mirror was held in the palm of her hand. She laughed unconsciously, took a deep breath, raised her fair and slender neck, and was ready to fight at any time. "My dear, let's go on a killing spree." While comforting the little baby in her belly, Su raised her feet and walked forward step by step. The person in front of her reacted a little slowly, perhaps because he still had some consciousness as a human being. When Su approached, he automatically made way for her. Su was not polite either, and slowly walked forward in her light running shoes. "Ah!" A shocking shout, with a hint of fear and panic, came from room 18. Su's heart trembled, and the water mirror in her palm instantly grew larger. She turned around on the spot and found that the sluggish people around her were just a little agitated by the shouting, but did not attack Su. However, they moved their feet and moved towards the door of room 18. Then, the door of ward 18 suddenly opened, and Xie Qingyan staggered out. There were traces of blood on his white down jacket, and one hand was still covering his bleeding neck. He pushed away those people with dull expressions and slow movements, rushed to the elevator, and then saw Su and shouted, "Su, run! Bai Luoluo has gone crazy." Su did not move, holding the fruit knife in her hand, waiting for Xie Qingyan to rush over, and then preparing to stab Xie Qingyan. Suddenly, her eyes were attracted by the person behind Xie Qingyan. She saw Bai Luoluo, wearing a slanting collar nightgown, walking out slowly and uncoordinatedly. Her pale face was obviously very thin, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Su was a little confused. If her memory was correct, shouldn't Bai Luoluo be a mutant? Like zombies, mutants are born with human physiques and are infected with the doomsday virus, which results in a physical mutation. In other words, in this pre-apocalyptic era, Once a person is infected with the doomsday virus, he or she will either become a zombie, a mutant, or an ordinary person with antibodies in his or her body. The doomsday virus has actually existed in the air for a long time. The closer it gets to December 31st, 2017, the more concentrated the doomsday virus will be in the air and water. In some places, some people with poor physical constitutions may begin to transform into zombies many days in advance. This city is the best example. After the apocalypse, a scientific research center once came to the conclusion that 80% of the world's 6.477 billion people turned into zombies on the first day of the apocalypse. Among the remaining 20%, only 1% became people with special powers, and the rest were ordinary people. Before the apocalypse, they were infected with a small number of doomsday viruses, and their bodies developed resistance to the doomsday virus. But this does not mean that these ordinary people will not be infected and become zombies again, or evolve into mutants after being bitten by zombies. It also does not mean that people who have become mutants will not become zombies, or their mutant powers will not mutate further after being bitten by zombies. It still depends on the individual's physique. When an ordinary person is bitten by a zombie, it depends on his resistance. When a person with special abilities is bitten by a zombie, it depends on the ability of the special energy in his body to restrain the doomsday virus. Whether or not one can evolve superpowers depends on one's physique and luck. If one really wants to take a chance, ordinary people can also take the initiative to run up and let the zombies bite them. As for becoming a god or a ghost, it all depends on luck. Su has lived in the apocalypse for 12 years. What she has seen most is that ordinary people are bitten by zombies, and most of them turn into zombies. When people with special abilities are bitten by zombies, most of them will not turn into zombies, but their special abilities will not mutate further. The premise is that they are bitten. Scratches or any other injuries cannot cause direct infection, but can only cause brief infection. But now in Xiangqing, the doomsday virus in the air is very trace. Bai Luoluo was a supernatural person in her previous life, so it is unlikely that she is a zombie in this life. However, the one standing in front of Su is indeed Bai Luoluo, who has been infected and turned into a zombie. Could it be related to Bai Luoluo being hospitalized and coming to a place where the doomsday virus is extremely active and concentrated? Or was it because Bai Luoluo was strangled half to death by Su before, which caused her to have low immunity and develop some kind of syndrome, so that she died before she could become a superpower and finally turned into a zombie? Or has someone in this hospital turned into a zombie? Did he bite Bai Luoluo? Su was distracted and accidentally let Xie Qingyan rush into the elevator, covering the wound on his neck. Xie Qingyan seemed to have suffered a great shock and was not in good condition. Although he called Su several times, he saw that Su did not move, and he did not even wait for Su. He pressed the elevator's close button with trembling fingers and quickly went to the first floor. Su looked back at the closed elevator door and smiled coldly. This was the true face of this man. No matter how many pledges he had made, or how he swore that he would never care about Su's imperfections, when faced with such a situation that exceeded the bottom line of human fear, Xie Qingyan's selfishness could no longer be concealed. It was so obvious that Xie Qingyan was like this on the first day of the doomsday in his previous life. Why didn't Su understand? She did not chase after Xie Qingyan, but turned to look at Bai Luoluo, who was walking towards her with a staggering step. At this moment, several people standing next to Bai Luoluo, with 4 drips on their bodies, subconsciously took a few steps back. Bai Luoluo turned around, making a hoarse sound, and pounced on the nearest person. She quickly stepped forward and pushed the water mirror in her left hand forward. The oval-shaped water mirror flew out and hit Bai Luoluo directly on her body, knocking Bai Luoluo, whose hands and feet were not very coordinated, to the ground. Before Bai Luoluo could get up with a hoarse cry, Su had already run closer and stepped on the water mirror with 1 foot. The water mirror pressed on Bai Luoluo's body. Su bent down and inserted the fruit knife in her hand into Bai Luoluo's forehead under the water mirror. She pried it hard, and a crystal the size of a pomegranate wrapped in dark red blood was pried out by Su's fruit knife. Su took it, and just as she straightened up, She heard a scream from the elevator door. She turned around and saw that the elevator was full of people. Among them, the person who was covering her face and screaming was Bailola's mother. Murder, murder, murder. Bailola's mother, still wearing her noble lady's dress and stepping on high heels, was about to rush over. Behind her, there seemed to be some people who knew Bailolaluo. They were holding gifts of different sizes and were running over with Bailola's mother. This group of people knocked over many wandering injured people along the way, and those who were knocked over seemed to have fainted and never got up again. Before Bailola's mother rushed over, Susu stepped on the water mirror and ran to the side quickly. She thought Bailola's mother would come after her, but Bailola's mother did not come up to fight Susu. Instead, she fell to the ground beside Bailolaluo and cried heartbreakingly. Luoluo, Luoluo, how can your mother live? Luoluo, Luoluo, wake up, my poor daughter. My daughter, you murderer. Call the police. You are so young. What kind of grudge do you have that you have to kill someone? The people who followed Bailola's mother over started to blame Susu. Some of them were quick-witted and had already taken out their phones to call the police. Susu looked at them coldly. Are these people planning to bring the police to the internal medicine department of this hospital where the doomsday virus is extremely active? How pitiful those public servants are. She raised her hand and threw out a few small pieces of water mirror, smashing the mobile phones in the hands of those people into pieces. Before everyone could be shocked, Bailola's mother rushed up at this moment and prepared to fight Susu desperately. Susu turned sideways and did not entangle with Bailola's mother. She ran towards the emergency stairs and only heard someone shouting behind him. Chase, don't let this murderer get away. Don't run. You can't get away with killing someone. As Susu ran, she searched for zombies that might have become zombies in the wards. As a result, she ran to the door of the emergency staircase, but she didn't see any other zombies in those wards. Susu looked back and saw those people who were pushing the injured and desperately trying to catch her. She raised her eyebrows and smiled, muttering to herself, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Who told you to be close to Bailola's family? Stay and join this zombie club. I won't accompany you anymore. Susu entered the emergency staircase, turned around to close the stair door, picked up a mop next to her, and inserted it into the handles of the two doors of the staircase, blocking the group of people chasing her in the zombie club. Then Susu walked downstairs briskly and decided to look for where Xie Qingyan was. Of course, she wouldn't be so stupid as to think that those people couldn't take the elevator just because they couldn't walk up the stairs. After all, it wasn't the end of the world yet, and the hospital had backup power generation equipment, so the elevator could still run for a long time. But now the hospital is really in chaos. There are people everywhere clamoring to smash the hospital and do this and that. Susu estimated that these people might not be able to call the police for a while, so she went down the stairs and got into the crowd. Who knows where she is? So Susu didn't rush out of the hospital, but focused on looking for Xie Qingyan in the crowd. That guy was bitten by Luoluo, who turned into a zombie. If he didn't turn into a zombie, he would become a superpower. It's natural for Susu to kill the zombie, but if someone like Xie Qingyan turned into a superpower, Susu would naturally kill him, but she would feel very unhappy in her heart. The first floor was still crowded with people. It was expected that the cell phone of Bailola's mother's group was smashed to pieces. She wanted to call the police, but couldn't find the phone quickly. The police in Xiangqing were also very busy at this time and could not get to the hospital in a short time. Susu looked around in the crowd, but Xie Qingyan had disappeared by then. Susu? Suddenly, Susu heard someone calling her from behind. She turned around and saw a tall and handsome man standing in the crowd. He was wearing a black casual suit. He frowned at her, and then, while Susu was stunned, he walked up to her. His handsome face had hard lines on it. He lowered his head and asked, Are you here to look for Qingyan? Yeah, I just saw him running out of the elevator holding his neck. Susu turned around and admitted it honestly. She pinched her palms and cursed in her heart. She almost forgot that there was such a person behind Xie Qingyan, Xie Yaoshi, Xie Qingyan's cousin. Xie Qingyan was just an ordinary person after the apocalypse, But because he had good relationships with people and had the help of women like Bai Luoluo and Su Su, he was able to survive quite well in the apocalypse. It was effortless for Su Su to kill him. But Xia Yaoshi was different. He was the #1 master in the apocalypse and a person with lightning superpowers. At that time, after the end of the world, Xia Yaoshi and Xia Qingyan lived very different lives. After the end of the world, neither of them had any contact with each other. Xia Yaoshi was very powerful in his east, while Xia Qingyan lived a mediocre life in Xiangqing.
Later, Shushukil Xiangyan.
The whole story finally reached Xia Yaoshi's ears, but Xia Yaoshi did not do anything to Su Su.
Henetter sont rivengion sunnuntai no helper sunnuntai torstai se krivenge.
Xia Yaoshi was there, high above her, while Su Su was still busy looking for her enemies everywhere and finally committed suicide at the White Tiger base. In the previous life, the two had nothing to do with each other, but in this life, Xia Yaoshi, who was supposed to be on a business trip abroad, actually came to the hospital in Xiangqing. How could Su Su take the initiative against Xia Qingyan? Would Xia Yaoshi become an obstacle for her? Wait, what did Xia Yaoshi say? Was she here to look for Xia Qingyan? Did he know where Xia Qingyan was? Su Su smiled slightly and took 2 steps forward. Xia Yaoshi looked at her, his straight eyebrows tightened as usual, and said, "He just said that Bai Luoluo bit his neck. The nurse has sent him over for bandaging. I'll take you to find him." "No, as long as he's okay, I have other things to do, so I'll leave first." If Xia Yaoshi really knew where Xia Qingyan was, then Su Su could not kill Xia Qingyan in front of Xia Yaoshi, because Su Su did not want to bring big trouble to Xia Yaoshi. In the previous life, Xia Yaoshi did not seek revenge on her because it was Xia Qingyan who was wrong first. Now in this life, Xia Qingyan has not done anything. If Su Su killed Xia Qingyan, in Xia Yaoshi's eyes, it would be a crime without reason. Xia Yaoshi must avenge this. So Su Su had to kill Xia Qingyan without Xia Yaoshi's knowledge. It didn't matter. In the past 10 years of the last days, she could endure the longing day by day. She was just waiting for an opportunity when Xia Qingyan was alone. There would always be a chance. Su Su. Just as Su Su turned around and left, Xia Yaoshi reached out and grabbed Su Su's slender arm. She frowned, turned around and waved her arm to shake Xia Yaoshi's hand away, with an expression of vigilance on her face that could not be concealed.
Susu, let's talk. Seeing Susu's attitude, Xia Yaoshi frowned even tighter.
He fastened the buttons of his casual suit with his long fingers and said in a strong tone that made people unable to refuse, "We must talk." "There's nothing to talk about and I don't want to talk." Su Su's attitude was also very tough. In her previous life, with her weak and easily manipulated personality, she would definitely do whatever Xia Yaoshi said. But in this life, Su Su didn't want to listen, and no one could force her. Forget it. Soon, Su Su's slender figure disappeared quickly in the crowd, leaving Xia Yaoshi standing there. He loosened one button of his suit near the hem. He put his hands on his waist, looked in the direction Su Su left, and then looked in the direction of Xia Qingyan, who was bandaging the wound in the emergency room. His brows were never relaxed. As a witness to the relationship between Su Su and Xia Qingyan, Su Su used to respect him and even fear him, but she had never been like she was today. It was as if she had become a different person, with her eyes full of alienation and vigilance. Xia Yaoshi just wanted to enlighten Su Su out of concern for her. After all, he has always liked this gentle girl since the first time he met her, and because of Xia Qingyan, Xia Yaoshi has always treated Su Su as his sister. But she never expected that although Su Su cared about Xia Qingyan in her heart, she was like a hedgehog on the surface, stabbing everyone she saw. She didn't even give Xia Yaoshi a face. In Su Su's heart, no matter what Xia Yaoshi felt now, it had nothing to do with Su Su. In the 12 years of the apocalypse, she and Xia Yaoshi had only met a few times, and every time they looked at each other from a distance without even saying a word. The feelings before the apocalypse had long faded in Su Su's heart without even a trace. She was just annoyed that Xia Yaoshi, who shouldn't have appeared, suddenly appeared here and disrupted her plan to kill Xia Qingyan. She hoped that the gods and Buddhas would bless her and turn Xie Qingyan into a zombie. Otherwise, how could she be worthy of Xiao AI who died in her previous life? And how could she be worthy of her 10 years of hard search? Su Su left, rubbing the sadness in her eyes, turned a corner, and went to the obstetrics and gynecology department again. She didn't register, so naturally she couldn't enter Zhuo Shijia's outpatient clinic. Su Su didn't think about seeing an outpatient today. She just wanted to wait outside Zhuo Shijia's outpatient clinic, quietly waiting for Zhuo Shijia to get off work. After waiting outside Zhuo Shijia's outpatient clinic for a while, Su Su discovered that there were quite few people visiting Zhuo Shijia's outpatient clinic today. Although there were many people in the hospital and the internal medicine department looked precarious, the obstetrics and gynecology department was not as crowded as the internal medicine department. Those who came here were either pregnant women or women who wanted to become pregnant women. The registration hall was crowded with people. How many pregnant women could insist on queuing up to register with a big belly? Even if there were family members to help queue up to register, today's weather was really bad. Can't you wait for a few days for better weather before doing the pregnancy test? Only those who are about to give birth will go out in this weather and be surrounded by their families to register for hospitalization and delivery. So Su Su sat outside for a while, and when another woman walked out of Zhuo Shijia's clinic with a big belly, Su Su walked in directly and sat down at Zhuo Shijia's table. Have you registered? Zhuo Shijia was writing a medical record. She looked up at Su Su. Su Su shook her head and handed over her medical record card and medical record book. She had brought them out in the morning and put them in the pocket of her down jacket. She said frankly, "No, there were too many people, the weather was bad, and I didn't have any family to help me register. I looked outside your door and came in directly." Hearing this, Zhuo Shijia tilted her head, took a closer look at Su Su, and flipped through Su Su's medical record. She seemed to remember that she had a deep impression of Su Su. She was the girl who was only 19 years old but was determined to give birth to the baby in her belly. A 19-year-old girl came for a pregnancy checkup alone in such a heavy rain, without any family members accompanying her, and even her boyfriend didn't come. It was a bit sad no matter how you looked at it. There's a self-service payment machine outside. I can also include the registration fee in the examination fee. No matter how difficult it is, you have to register to see a doctor. This is the rule. Without rules, there will be no order. Have you felt unwell these days? I feel sleepy, wanna but can't, always feel hungry and feel weak all over. I say, you kid, you are a child yourself, and you still want to have a baby. I tell you, this is all normal in the early stages of pregnancy. Why didn't you exercise some restraint when you were happy? Now that you have a child, you don't know anything. What are you going to do after the child is born? Even I, a doctor, am worried about you. Zhuo Shijia was lecturing while typing a few times on the keyboard. Go ahead. Okay, thanks.
Shushunari.
She was not at all dissatisfied with Zhuo Shijia's preaching. She listened and really listened well. However, after the B ultrasound results came out, Su Su held the B ultrasound result with the black and white photo in her fingers, her face full of tears. Is this her little AI? It looks so strange. In her previous life, she had never done a pregnancy test. She had been fleeing in the last days. Even if she was determined to give birth to little AI, she could only imagine in her mind what little AI would look like in the future. But now she saw it. Su Su took the B ultrasound result and rushed directly into Zhuo Shijia's clinic. She cried and pointed at the little AI that looked like a comma on it and asked, "Is this my little love?"
Xiao.
Zhuo Shijia was a little confused about this title. She glanced at the ultrasound result held up by Su Su and suddenly realized it. She nodded and said in professional terms, "The fetal heartbeat and fetal bud are clearly visible. It is growing healthily. As a mother, you should not do too strenuous exercise during this period. The first 3 months are the dangerous period. Eat more healthy fruits and vegetables and take a moderate walk. Can you run and jump? No strenuous exercise." Zhuo Shijia emphasized it again and looked at Su Su as if he was looking at a naughty child. Su Su smiled awkwardly and touched her belly. "What should I do, Xiao AI?" "The doctor said that I can't do strenuous exercise. How can we go fight monsters and rob? Okay, I won't run or jump. I definitely won't. At most, I would just swing my knife and chop the zombie's head. Thanking Zhuo Shijia for the medical advice, Su walked out of Zhuo Shijia's outpatient clinic with a smile on her face, holding Xiao Ai's black and white beat ultrasound photo. Then she sat in an inconspicuous corner outside the clinic, waiting for Zhuo Shijia to get off work. She looked at Xiao Ai's photo over and over again, crying and laughing like a madman. Xiao Ai, her Xiao Ai looked like a little comma, a naughty little comma. Time passed by minute. During this time, Su's father and mother called Su and asked her if she had eaten lunch. Su said that she had already eaten, and after reassuring them, they waited for another hour or so. Zhuo Shijia finally walked out of the clinic and prepared to go off work. As an attending physician, there are actually many things to take care of. Although Zhuo Shijia was in the morning outpatient clinic, she took a stroll in the obstetrics department afternoon. It was not until around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon that she took off her white coat, walked out of the obstetrics and gynecology department, and walked home holding an umbrella. The hospital was in such a mess today. It was so chaotic that for such a big hospital, someone died in the internal medicine department, but it didn't cause any sensation. Not even a police car came. Anyway, whether the police would come or not, quarrels, fights, and injuries could be seen everywhere in the hospital. Just like Su's father said, the doctor-patient relationship was really tense. Following Zhuo Shijia, Su saw several people who were about to turn into zombies. They looked even more serious than the patients in the internal medicine department on the 5th floor, as if they could open their eyes and bite people in the next second. Su didn't have time to wait for the moment they opened their eyes and completely turned into zombies. She followed Zhuo Shijia not too close and found that this chief physician of obstetrics and gynecology looked only 30 years old, but did not have any entertainment activities after get off work. Then Su got in the car, drove her military jeep, and followed Zhuo Shijia all the way into an old residential area near the hospital, watching Zhuo Shijia climb the stairs and open the door to enter the house. Because it was too simple, Su backed the car out of the parking space again. She planned to go to the nearby Kandaiji to eat some fast food. Oh, no. Didn't Zhuo Shijia tell her to eat more fruits and vegetables? Then she would go buy some bananas and apples and put them in the car and wait until dark to arrest the person. As the car started, a woman's scream suddenly came from the rain. Su looked up sharply and determined that the scream came from Zhuo Shijia's house. She immediately got out of the car and ran into the old-fashioned house opposite in the rain. Is it my fault that I can't have a baby? Is it my fault? I've checked, and there's nothing wrong with me. You have no problem, so what's my problem? We can't live like this anymore if we get a divorce. If we don't get a divorce, my whole life will be ruined by you. A man's voice sounded, and just as Su rushed to the 5th floor, Zhuo Shijia's door opened with a bang, and a man wearing an iron-gray cotton coat, who looked like a cadre in some government agency, ran out angrily with an umbrella. He seemed to have not expected that there was someone standing at the bottom of the corridor at the door, so he stopped in the corridor for a moment. In just such a moment, Zhuo Shijia rushed out with disheveled hair, as if he could not control his emotions, and seemed to have not expected that the man would stand motionless at the entrance of the corridor. So naturally, the man was knocked down by Zhuo Shijia, fell down the stairs, and lay at Su's feet holding an umbrella, motionless. Standing in the corridor, Zhuo Shijia's tearful face was filled with panic. She was only wearing a thin sweater. She ran down the stairs with weak steps and squatted beside the man. At first, she was a little at a loss. She checked the man's physical appearance from top to bottom, then touched the pulse on the man's neck with trembling fingers. Her face turned pale instantly. She looked up and said to Su, he's dead. I killed my husband. You didn't kill him. Su lowered her head and looked expressionlessly at the man's pale face and dark circles under his eyes. Judging from his appearance, the man looked like a panda and had already become a zombie in a serious state. If Zhuo Shijia had not pushed him, he would have turned into a zombie in a while. It wouldn't take long, probably after 12 o'clock in the morning. No, I killed him. I killed my husband. I killed someone. I pushed my husband down the stairs, and he died. Zhuo Shijia held her head and sat down next to her husband. She looked so fragile that she didn't look like a chief physician at all. Su Su looked down at her and felt a little impatient. What she needed was a Zhuo Shijia who could help her give birth to little AI smoothly, not this Zhuo Shijia who was as fragile as a paper man. But killing people and zombies, that all of these must be experienced by people. Only after experiencing them can people grow, and they will build a wall for their souls. With this wall, Zhuo Shijia will be better able to face the end of the world. Su Su can help her kill zombies, send her supplies, and even provide her with a place to live after the end of the world, but he cannot help her build a wall of her soul. After thinking about it, Su Su hesitated for a while, walked around Zhuo Shijia, who was breaking down and crying on the ground, went up the stairs, stood at Zhuo Shijia's door, looked down at Zhuo Shijia below, walked directly into the open security door, and glanced at Zhuo Shijia's house. Although this kind of home looks a bit old in decoration and is not very spacious and bright, it has a strong academic atmosphere. Zhuo Shijia's home